Welcome to Philosophical Fall Guy. Here, Hollywood's top stunt performers share their stories of what really goes on behind the scenes. Then we dive deep into their psyche to see what drives them and what they ponder about in those moments of quiet between the chaos. I'm your host, Duke Jackson. Join me as we pull back the curtain on Hollywood's biggest stunts to see the deeper story. Buckle up. We're going for a ride. I'm super stoked because this is our pilot episode, and we have none other than the legendary Noon Orsatti. That's right, Noon is known as stunt royalty in the business, and let me tell you why. According to IMDb, he has 188 stunt credits. Now, it's probably a lot more than that, but IMDb doesn't always get some of those older ones. So 52 of which are stunt coordinator, 26 actor credits, 8 second unit and assistant director credits. He's known for John Rambo, Expendables 1 and 2, Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Borderlands, Extraction 2, just to name a few. He has 2 Emmy nominations, and he's won 2 SAG Awards, and he has 5 more nominations. Now the one which every stunt player dreams about, the highly esteemed Taurus World Stunt Awards, where he won Best Stunt Coordinator and Second Unit Director for the incredible, groundbreaking action of Extraction 2. If you've never seen it, the movie is amazing. The action sequences they did in that just blow your mind, including like a 23-minute oneer. It's just amazing stuff. But Noon, welcome, my beloved brother. Thank you so much for being here today. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so grateful to have you here, Noon. I can't wait to get into this.
Yeah, I had to grin when you were singing the accolades. Yeah,
But it's true. So
thank you.
let's start from the beginning, Noon.
Okay.
How did you get into stunts?
I come from the era of nepotism. It's still available, but at the same time, I think back in the 80s, when I was coming up as a young stunt guy, that the nepotism was, it was a fact in our business, and I always kidded around that I would like to be part of a stunt group, Sons of Stunts,
Sons of
because
Stunts. That sounds awesome.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking, oh, there were the Rondells, the Wilders, the
Yeah.
Gilberts.
Those are some big stunt names right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
those are
it would have been
legends.
A fun go. Maybe it'll happen still.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's
Maybe, yeah,
it's
maybe you can
coming
still
back.
put it
It
together.
seems. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, so nepotism was my in. My father was an esteemed stunt guy.
and your
My
father was
Ernie Orsatti.
Ernie
Yeah.
Orsatti. Yes.
Yeah. My uncle Frank, he was one of the original 14 Stunts Unlimited members.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my grandfather, that goes back to Buster Keaton days. So
Buster Keaton?
yeah, indeed.
What?
Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my family, and in addition to that, my grandfather had 4 brothers, and they were the Orsatti agency. And
Really?
yeah, during the time of Prohibition, my family, they were kind of mobsters. They came from
What?
from Naples, Italy,
Are you
and
kidding?
yeah,
What?
yeah, a little bit of a mafia
Wow.
background.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, so they had come here, and they had befriended LB Mayer, and I believe it was at a bar that they frequented. And during Prohibition, no booze, no anything. Well,
So explain to our audience who LB Mayer is.
so Metro Goldwyn Mayer
Metro
is
Goldwyn Mayer.
MGM,
Yeah,
and
MGM.
LB Mayer was befriended my uncle. So these five brothers, ran this agency for L.B. Mayer, and I mean, at the time, they were the biggest talent agent in Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah, they cast Judy Garland to the Wizard of
What?
Oz, and
That is amazing.
yeah, so and then there's one more aspect. One of the brothers had a son named Kendall Orsatti, who
Kindle.
ended up being the national executive director of Screen Actors Guild for many years.
Wow.
He's the one that inked a lot of our good contracts,
Yeah.
I'll say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
back in the day. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. I think this is maybe early 2000s that he retired. Maybe I'm wrong there, but
Hmm.
late 90s.
Okay.
But anyways, he was it was fun to hang, on my SAG card for much of my life. His name was the signature on the SAG card.
Wow.
So yeah, if you held on to your old SAG card, my name's on there,
That
at
your
least
name's on
last
there.
name. So yeah,
That's
I guess the royalty
interesting
part
history.
is I can buy it a little bit,
Yeah.
but there's so much more to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd love to hear more about your grandpa and his relationship with Buster Keaton.
Well, okay, so let's just say there's family lore
Hmm.
that takes us back to Buster Keaton and my grandfather, who was his double or doubled him. Let's just say
What?
doubled him, because
Wow.
taking nothing away from Buster Keaton, there was an excerpt from a newspaper where my grandfather had to voice the fact that he was never Buster's stunt double. Now,
Really?
that
Okay.
begs for a little
Yeah.
questioning why
Why?
it. So my grandfather played for the St. Louis Cardinals. He
Oh,
was
cool.
during the 1927 to 1935. I think he played for them.
Wow.
Yeah, he was quite a famous guy. They won two World Series while he was on the
Really?
team. Yeah, he was center fielder. He had a 306 lifetime
Wow.
batting average.
Dang.
Yeah, he was great.
Huh.
But several of the team members would do these little antics, and they'd do flips and do all kinds of tricks with the
Yeah.
bats and the balls and the whole thing.
Really?
And
That's
he was
cool.
part of this little group that would entertain the crowd. And he was
Huh.
also his nickname was Showboat
Showboat.
on the team, and he would go out and do the old round off back
Backflip.
handspring backflip,
That's awesome.
way before Ozzie Smith was doing it.
Wow.
And so
Very
uh,
physically talented guy, he sounds
yeah,
like. Very, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
capable.
there's another aspect of this family that always I marveled at. That Vic Orsatti, who was one of the talent agents and turned producer, he had his
Uh-huh.
own series, the long running series. Uh, it escapes me right now what it was called, but Vic Orsatti was his name,
Okay.
and Victor, and
Victor. Hmm.
he had won in his high school a home run derby,
Oh,
and
wow.
the and yeah, and the award
Uh-huh.
was Babe Ruth's bat that he hit the
What?
very first ball out of New York Stadium.
Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
no. So he wins
What?
that. He has it all his life. When he dies, he had willed it to his caretaker, who then brought it to Sotheby's. They sold it. It was the highest, and it still may be the highest dollar amount auctioned
Wow.
item
Really?
ever. Yeah. So
Wow.
it sold for over $1 million. It was crazy.
Oh my
So
God, dude. That's
so there is,
crazy.
it's funny. I always call myself the baseball reject in the family. I was quite good as a little leaguer, but
Yeah.
it wasn't, I liked going fast
Wasn't
on
into
motorcycles
cards, huh?
more. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, so the family's been in and around this business for, since silent film, really.
Hmm.
Buster Keaton and my grandfather, going back to that. I have read newspapers from the past that said Ernie Orsatti, Buster Keaton's stunt double, and then there's
Wow.
the other
Really?
one where my grandfather has to make a retraction
Yeah.
or a explanation. And again, he was quite famous. So my father told me that the mail would get to him with just his name on it.
Oh
And
my God.
I guess you're part of a World Series winning
I
team
guess,
and a very
yeah.
famous baseball team at the
That's crazy,
time.
man.
So Yeah,
Plus,
and
if you
so
got
then
some
in
brothers
his
who are in the mafia, that might
possibly,
help a little bit.
you know, yeah, just at times you wish you could just bend an ear, of a dead relative and just say,
Yeah,
"Hey, how did this really go
yeah.
down? And
That's
and why did this family just all of a sudden disappear from the face of Hollywood?" Really, it seemed like
mm,
over, and where'd the money go?
yeah.
So, a lot of questions
All
burning in
right.
my mind.
Well, you are one of the last Orsattis that is in the business right now.
Yeah, so I'm the third
The
generation. I
third,
have my son Roby,
Roby.
who's he's quite a
Yeah.
talented kid himself, and has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Very
Yeah.
good at
Yeah.
skateboarding and gymnastics and that
Awesome.
kind of thing. So
Awesome.
and he's super film savvy. So yeah,
Perfect.
he's fourth. I have a grandson also, Levi, who knows, maybe he'll pick
Maybe
up the
he'll.
torch. Or I scratch my head and wonder, is this business even going to be the same thing? And
Yeah.
even
It's
in
it's
five
hard to tell
years,
these days,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's moving
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah. It is. It is. I'm just curious. Did your grandpa get your dad into stunts then, or how did?
Uh, I I don't remember it working that way. What I remember is my grandmother, who was an opera singer and part of the Orsatti
Your
agency.
story just gets
Yeah,
crazier all the
it's deep.
time, dude.
So she was she had sung at the Met when she's
Wow.
16 years old, the youngest to ever sing at the Met, and
When your
was
family
then
does something, they got to be like the
yeah, there's
end of the spectrum extreme.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she was on her way to become one of the big starlets, and she was signed by the Orsatti agency. Her name was Inez Gorman, and my grandfather saw her, and said, "Yeah, that's you're gonna be my wife," kind of thing.
You
Anyways,
come
they
me now.
good relationship. They have my dad Ernie. They have my uncle Frank.
Hmm.
Uh, they get a divorce. My uncle Frank, from what I remember, is goes to live with dad,
Hmm.
and yeah, so my uncle Frank goes to live with the father, my grandfather,
Uh-huh.
uh, and the baseball player, stuntman, and then my father goes to live with my grandmother
Hmm.
and his mom, and
Okay.
so they had one of those not act, you know extremely close knit families, we would
Mm-hmm.
say. And
Mm-hmm.
regardless, my father was exceptional at baseball, and
He just learned by just going in and
but,
playing on Little League.
the story he told me was my grandfather never threw a baseball to him,
What?
but yeah, he was
That's
obviously a
crazy.
standout. I was working on the show Sisters. I was doubling George Clooney, funny enough. The cameraman had gone to high school with my father. I think he was a year or two older than him, but he
Uh-huh.
brings his high school from Beverly Hills High, his yearbook.
Uh-huh.
And there it is. My dad is just a 10th grader. There was so much written on him on that he's already being scouted by professional teams. I
Really?
remember the
Wow.
Dodgers were looking at my dad from his high
The
school.
Dodgers, huh? Wow.
And then, it's funny. I'm just right at this moment, retrospectively, going, well, my father was a little bit rebellious against his father,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in the, for whatever reason, resentful, I would say, to a
Mm-hmm.
degree. And he chose the path of, instead of pursuing baseball, he ends up, and/or stunts, he ends up going into the Marine Corps.
Wow.
He enlisted in
Hmm.
the Marine Corps. Didn't see any battle,
Action.
but the reason being, my grandmother, her brother he was a colonel. He retired with a general's pension.
Mm.
He had seven Purple Hearts. He was the most decorated Marine at the time,
Mm.
and he was full blown colonel,
Was he kind of close to him, your
and he was
uncle?
very close to him. So
Oh,
he
okay.
went on. Yeah, I'm just looking at that. I wonder if it's because my father, didn't want to have a relationship with the dad. And anyways,
This is a
that's
kind
another
of
rabbit hole to,
yeah.
yeah, maybe.
F you kind of,
Perhaps, but
yeah.
then my Uncle Frank, he became a merchant marine, and
Hmm.
so traveled all over the world doing that, and then eventually, um, I heard a story, and I'm not absolutely sure of that. There was this guy named Irwin Allen who did the Poseidon Adventure,
Hmm.
who did
This
the
was back in the
Towering
70s.
Inferno, who did the Swarm. He was
Yeah, those big disaster
yeah, he
movies.
was the disaster
Yeah.
filmmaker of his time, and he attracted the biggest stars to work with him.
Hmm.
And my father told me that his nickname was Goggles. He used to be the mail clerk in the at the Orsatti agency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, Goggles,
Goggles,
because he had these super thick.
glasses.
Well, one story that I heard is from my grandmother once upon a time is that uh, both kids were not there. Neither of them were pursuing anything really, and my
Mm.
grandmother said, "Hey, time to get up," and made a phone call to one of them or something like that. At least
Yeah.
in my dad's case, and my dad started getting these acting roles. He really wanted to be an actor, not a stuntman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not at all. And both my uncle
Mm.
and my dad are, I think exceptionally
Had
good
the
looking
looks.
guys.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad was modeled. He was the Foster Grant, calendar guy.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's where you get it from,
he
huh?
was super handsome. Yeah, yeah. My face has been broken a few times too, so it's not gonna be too symmetrical. But uh, so I know that Irwin Allen took a liking to my father. He worked on most all of Irwin's things, and he'd
Mm.
always get a part. And on the Poseidon Adventure, my father was hired as an actor,
Mm.
and uh, Irwin Allen really wanted the whole cast to be able to say they did their own stunts. It was in that time era
Mm.
where,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of notoriety was useful in
Right.
selling tickets, I
Selling
guess.
tickets. Yeah.
And so my father had the biggest gag in the movie to do, and it was a very iconic stunt in its time. I think they had 9 cameras on it,
Wow.
at very least 7 cameras on it,
The biggest
and
stunt in the biggest movie.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's the scene where the ship turns
Turns over
upside
upside down.
down, and there's a guy hanging. There's actually several people hanging from these tables, but the one featured is my father, front and center,
Mm.
and he has to let go, and he goes falling. I don't know. It looks up to be about 40, maybe 45 feet.
Mm.
A
Wow.
fall into this candy glass giant window.
Oh.
It's a skylight that
Skylight.
was at the top of the ship one second. Now it's at
Right.
the floor.
Oh.
And I mean, looking at it, reliving it, it looks very painful. I mean,
Yeah.
the stop is immediate, and and it's all on camera.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's quite an iconic shot.
Well, I mean, that's like I can remember that shot. It was like in slow motion and everything in the movie, like
Uh,
right.
Slow motion. No, I think that's because it was a fairly decent length
It was just
fall.
that was
Yeah.
just that
I
moment
don't
of
recall it being in slow motion.
okay.
There's a lot. It's a very vignette type of scene.
Mm.
Anyways, they do cuts of, tilt,
Tilting the
Dutch
camera.
cameras, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
Get
uh,
artistic with it.
yeah, and the guys tumbling down the ballroom floor,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that is really how my father gets started
As
as
a
the
stuntman.
stunt guy, and then so
And from
that's
that point
part.
on, he's just known as a stunt guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
He had worked before that on some films as a stuntman, as a stunt actor.
Uh-huh.
So he already had been kind of pigeonholed. It's really hard to become an actor when you already have the stigma,
Of a stuntman.
yeah,
Yeah.
of a stuntman, and
I
so
believe me, I know.
yeah, yeah, it's a tough road,
Yeah.
and it's funny. Hollywood, they all producers all talk to each other, or so it seems, or so it used to be, anyways.
Hmm.
But that's how my dad starts. But so the how my uncle starts is a little foggy, but I would guess that my uncle probably started a little earlier than my father, and definitely earlier in the stunts, because I remember as a child when Stunts Unlimited was just founded,
Yeah.
and they would host these weekend, uh, they would do different events
Oh, like the
for
charity shows and
charity,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
where
Hmm.
sometimes it would be for the blind or the homeless or the
Yeah.
this that and
I remember those, and there was a big scene in Hooper, the movie Hooper,
oh yeah,
where
there you have it.
they
Yes.
did
So
that.
anyways,
Yeah.
well, I'm a kid getting to watch these things go on. I
Hmm.
remember I want to say it was Buddy Joe Hooker that
Oh,
there
Buddy
was
Joe.
a wheel ramp and they were in a Volkswagen Bug. I feel like it was in Chatsworth somewhere,
Uh-huh.
but where it was exactly, I'm probably 7 years old, I think,
Wow.
7 or 8 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah. Huh.
Uh, this is 71 or 2. I
Okay.
think that's when they started. Um, and yeah, I remember those weekends where
Hmm.
they would do these shows. And it's funny, one time my uncle told me that he did this, gets out of the car, runs out, throws all his Nomex on and lights himself up and
Yeah.
did this
Huge
horrendously
fire
big
burn.
fire burn. And, put him out there. Like, yeah, we're here for the blind, kind of thing. They felt the heat,
Felt the
obviously,
heat
but
from
yeah.
it.
uh, but I think, yeah, they started back in the, I want to say Mannix, some of the TV shows that were
Hmm.
uh, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. My father was the first talking ape.
What?
Yeah, he was the first ape to talk on in that
Oh, that's
movie.
awesome.
Uh, and it's funny, he told me that story too, which were my Uncle Frank. They're both in full ape prosthetics, and my
Uh-huh.
dad walks right up to him and says, "Hey, Frank." Just knew it was him out of
All the
all
other
the
apes.
other stuntmen. Yeah, he's just the way he walked, the way he stood. He's like, "Hey, Frank."
Hey,
He's
Frank.
like, "What?" Yeah. Um, but they go back. It's we're talking in the '60s,
Uh-huh.
probably early '60s. I know
Yeah.
my dad worked with Elvis on a few
Oh,
things.
that's man.
Yeah,
Dang, dude.
but really wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
Didn't go his way, and he had some really good friends that kind of improved his lot in the stunt coordinating world as well.
Hmm.
He had a very good friend named
I just
Jerry
want to ask real
Henshaw.
quick.
Yeah.
Did you ever work with John Wayne? That was my hero as a kid.
I
Was John
I
Wayne?
don't recall any stories of
No.
John Wayne.
That's all
I
right.
would I
Just thought
would
I'd ask.
I would almost guess that my uncle perhaps had in
Yeah.
one of the latest
Yeah. He did a
most
lot of
recent
westerns,
ones.
60s.
My
That's how
father.
your dad got into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
father gets into it through the acting,
Right.
and then forced to. Oh, I was going to say, so he became really good friends with Jerry Henshaw, who was at one time uh, he was the president in charge of productions at
Oh, okay.
Fox at once, and
Right.
then over at Universal. He was
Mm.
one of those big gun for hires. He finally broke away, formed his own company called American International Pictures, if I recall.
Okay.
And he loved my father dearly. They were
Mm.
both UCLA Bruin fans, diehard UCLA Bruin
Oh,
fans,
yeah.
and that's what they had in common. And he really kind of helped my father's career along quite a bit.
Okay. I mean, I would imagine that even back then, the Orsatti name was still kind of well known in the film industry.
Uh,
I mean, from your
I
grandpa
would
and
say yes. I
yeah,
mean, there's always been an Orsatti in there somewhere for
mm,
sure. Whether
right.
it's Kendall through SAG or
Mm,
my uncle Vic. I think the last time he had produced I want to say it was the Rifleman that he produced uh, with Calhoun. Rory Calhoun, I think,
okay.
was the name of the actor
Yeah, I
yeah, and
think
they
you're
had
right.
formed a production company called Roarvik, or
Mm,
Vic Roarvik.
oh,
Yeah, and that
wow.
I think so. Vic there, and then yeah. So I think our family's always been throughout this business.
Yeah,
There wasn't really a downtime of it.
yeah. And did your dad step into the coordinating pretty easily, or
He did. Yeah, he did. He caught fire really quick.
yeah?
He was a very crafty man. He was a jack of all trades. He was an exceptionally good athlete. I mean, I always figured my father could talk to princes and paupers
Hmm.
without any delineation.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, these
yeah.
they were
Well,
equal to him. I really appreciated about them. He was an eloquent
well,
speaker.
on that note, your dad was actually the first guy that I ever hustled,
Oh, no kidding.
and I didn't even know what hustling was.
Dang.
I was just in Vegas on my 21st birthday, and I had gone out there in hopes to maybe pass some headshots out to the live shows they had at
Yeah.
the MGM Studios and um, the Mirage and our Treasure Island rather. Um, and we walk into, I think it was the Stardust Casino, and here's this whole film equipment, but the crew's all on like lunch or something. And there's one guy sitting in a director's chair, like, reading his newspaper. And I walk up to him and I'm like, "Excuse me, sir." He looks up and I'm like, "I'm looking for the stunt coordinator. Is he around?" And he looks at me kind of funny. He's like, "I'm the stunt coordinator. What can I do for you?" And I was like, "What? Wow, okay." And I just proceeded to tell him I wanted to get into stunts, and he was really helpful and patient, and gave me a lot of good information, and just sat there and talked to me the whole time. And my mom walks up and talks to him a little bit, and says hi, and it was really cool. And then he invited me to the set the next night because you guys were filming down on Fremont Street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
and
funny. You're saying that now. Wow, did that bring back memories? I
yeah,
can remember sitting in that lobby of the Stardust, which is, long gone.
yeah, that's gone.
Uh,
Yeah,
and so you came back the next night,
I came back
and
the next
that was the
night,
night that I
and
was doing the 180 in the middle of
yes,
Fremont Street. Oh
yes,
man,
yeah, you had the
wow,
wig on.
dude,
You
that,
come walking down the road, and
that's crazy.
yeah, I said hi, and you shook my hand, and
Yeah,
it's like, "Oh, that's cool," and then went off and did your
yeah,
stunt.
I
It
was
was
doubling Paul Gosselaar
Mark
on that.
Pargosler.
Wow,
Yep,
that's so funny, dude.
Zach.
Wow,
Yeah,
crazy.
I've doubled him a couple of times
Oh,
in
that's,
in the years. Yeah,
Yeah, 3 degrees of separation.
right.
Is it 3 degrees of separation? I think it is, right?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So
Mm.
I really met you back, what would that have been?
Oh,
19.
jeez, dude. It was my
I
21st
vaguely
birthday,
remember
so
this too, now that you're mentioning it.
it would have been 94,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I can remember. I remember Eddie Ansick was there too. I think he
Oh,
was
was he?
doubling that character Screech.
That was
Right?
great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wild, wow. That's wild times.
yeah. It was.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, our paths have crossed a couple of times.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. I know you said earlier he gave you some advice. Like, what was his, like, how did he advise you to go into the business, or did he
Oh,
advise you?
um, well, I think where I started to interact with him the most was when he was on Hill Street Blues.
Mm,
I mean, in this capacity,
yeah,
where he encouraged me to ask questions, and he would introduce me to the a camera operator, and so
mm,
and all these guys are just Emmy award winning. Everybody on
right.
that show
Yeah,
is an
best of the
Emmy award
best.
winning.
Yeah, I mean that show they filmed it like a movie. It didn't look like a TV show when you watched it. It was
Yeah, the
pretty
camera moves
groundbreaking.
were odd at the time.
Yeah.
They were different, and
Mm,
everybody started,
mm.
doing the whole botch go
There
tight
was a
medium
lot of
wide.
steady camming in that show, wasn't there? If I
What's
remember right,
that?
wasn't there a lot of steady camming in that show where they follow him walking down the
They
hallways
did a
and
lot
into
of
all the
that.
different
Yep,
rooms and
they sure did.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so a lot of famous people came out of that thing. But I remember him saying, "Noon, learn what everybody does on the set."
mm,
And I've also recommended that to everybody that ever asks me that question.
mm,
I think it's invaluable. Right?
yeah,
Uh, learn what everybody does on the set. You
yeah,
become much better. Learn camera. Learn, you know, what side of the line you're on. What a 50
yeah. Good
what a
one.
50 mil looks like from this distance, and you're
Hmm.
doing a fight over there. You're not even in the shot. What are you,
Right.
stupid? Kind
Yeah,
of thing.
you're killing
Um,
yourself and hitting the
yeah.
ground 20 times and you're not even in frame.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think that intelligence goes a long way.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, but it did avail me opportunity to because it was a family, and I got to ask questions of every department really. So, I did do my due
Yeah.
diligence and tried to learn as
Well, I
much
mean,
as
it's
I
paid
could while
off
I had.
now. You're
Oh, and the other thing that he absolutely harped on was never hang out in the honey wagon or your
oh,
room.
good
You're not
advice.
going to learn
Yeah.
anything. Be on set as much as you're allowed to be on set.
Right.
And
And they didn't have cell phones back then.
yeah,
That's a killer nowadays, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
But hey,
That's the
there's a
times we
useful
live in.
tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that pretty much explains how you got into the business.
Oh yeah.
But I'd also like to know why, because sometimes just because your family's into something doesn't necessarily mean you want to take that path too. So, uh, why did you go ahead? Why did you decide to go ahead and become a stuntman?
The why is, oh boy, that's an interesting question because then you get into the philosophical mind
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but keeping things on the you know on the mundane level, we'll
For
say.
now,
I would
for now.
say that I always consider myself a stunt kid. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had my SAG card since 1969. At least that's what it
Wow.
says. But in reality, I have been on film in front of camera since I was four. So
Mm.
that's 1967 is probably when I make my debut on a movie, and
What movie was that?
it was for I was playing a part called the Toy Grabber on a Wally Cox
Toy
movie.
Grabber.
If you can remember who Wally Cox
Wally
was, he's
Cox.
the
Okay.
center.
Not to
He's
look
the
him up.
center square in Hollywood Squares. If anybody even remembers
If
that.
anybody gets that reference,
Yeah,
some of those Gen X they'll know what we're talking about.
yeah.
But
But the why is a good question, Duke. In addition to always being athletic and, you know, I would have considered myself quite a good athlete. I was winning awards as, in the camps I would go to, outstanding
really,
athlete,
wow,
and going through
outstanding
junior
athlete.
high and high school, I'd always get the gold patch,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Mm.
I was twisting a throttle at probably age 7 or 8. Reed Rondell showed me how to shift a bike. Scott Wilder
Reed
showed me how
Rondell
to
did.
my way around Indian
Wow.
dunes. Uh, yeah, so um, I think that was always in my
Mm.
mind. There were
Yeah,
other
it came naturally to you.
Yeah, I had other
It really did.
distractions though. I loved snow skiing. I loved the winter sports,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I really wanted to at least explore snow skiing as a career. I wanted to go. I actually had planned to move up to Mammoth Mountain, become a ski patrol. I just wanted to build days. I loved it so much. And then,
Yeah. Really.
yeah, and so that's
Wow.
when I'm 17 years old
17.
and graduated early because my father was going to go do a movie in what was then Yugoslavia,
Mm.
and Brenda Starr, I think the movie was called,
What was it
and
called?
Brenda Starr.
Brenda Starr. Okay.
Yep, and it never materialized. He had gone on 6 months worth of scouts and et cetera, et cetera. But
Uh,
I got out of school early, took the GED out of high school. So at 17 years old, I'm now running up to Mammoth Mountain to become a ski patrol. And
is that why you got your GED so you could
yeah,
get out
well,
there early?
there was religious reasons also at the
Oh, okay.
time
All right.
that were going to play a part.
Well,
But
okay.
um, so going from Mammoth Mountain, my father calls me. I'd take this 17-hour drive over Donner Pass in the worst snowstorm ever in my little
Mm.
Subaru, and I get to an in-law's house, and he said, "Hey, I've got this great show. It's Winds of War, Herman Wouk's
Winds of
Winds
War.
of War, uh, and why don't you just forget the ski patrolling thing
Yeah.
and come and work on this thing?" Well, I worked on it for a week,
Mm.
surrounded by all these Stunts
So
Unlimited.
was that your first kind of big time movie to being
Yeah,
on set,
that
being a
was
part
really
of,
the first. I mean, it's the first time I would count myself as a
as
stuntman.
doing stunts? Okay.
Was on
Yeah.
Winds of War. I
Winds of
did my
War.
very first stunt with R.A. Rondell.
R.A.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Nice.
We were playing Navy. It was a Pearl Harbor reenactment scene. They had zeros, real zeros flying overhead.
Really?
We were shooting in Port Hueneme.
Oh, that would be crazy,
Yeah,
man.
Port Hueneme. We're shooting. I forget what, like a 72 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, and then
Wow.
the effects go
Awesome.
off, and back we go tumbling. Then in another scene, we go flopping over the railing.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, it was a great learning experience. One
I
week with
bet, man.
all these superstar guys that invented the air ram.
Yeah, yeah.
There were there were some great Kenyon Doso with his new ratchet and air
Oh,
ram,
really?
and
So that
Joe
was
Finnegan,
that
and
was what movie, one of the first movies where they got to incorporate some of those type of tools
Ye-
into it?
oh yeah,
Oh,
I mean
really?
it was the first time for me actually. They
Okay.
had been around a little bit, but not much.
Hmm. Interesting.
Uh, and then they were starting to experience lighting themselves on fire while they're going off an air ram over
Hmm.
50 feet into the water.
Awesome. That
So
sounds
yeah,
fun.
it was everything you could dream of as a
Yeah.
what I'd consider myself a wild child,
Yeah, yeah.
and and so. Uh, I got the bug at
Yeah.
that point.
Got hooked, huh?
At that
Yeah.
point, it wasn't. There's no turning back. It was. I love this.
Hmm.
In spite of all the accidents that happen, or I say
Yeah.
accidents, but yeah,
So when
we're.
you go overboard,
Mhm.
um, did they haul you back up to keep
Oh
doing
no,
takes?
yeah. Oh, that's a funny story, actually. So if I recall right, the thing was everybody's going to be flying off the side of this boat, and there was,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, maybe 30 stunt guys involved in this
Oh,
things. Yeah,
wow.
guys going off on
That sounds
fire, guys
like
going
so
off
much
with
fun.
pods, going. Yeah,
Awesome.
and well, we end up in the water, and there was a direct way back to the shore, which was a long swim.
Hmm.
And then there was the jetty way, which is the way R.A. Rondell and I took. And I remember because it was about a 200-yard walk back to where everybody was. Well,
Uh-huh.
in that 200-yard walk, by the time we had gotten to the jetty and were walking, people were in panic. Where's Noon and R.A.? Where's
Oh,
Noon and
no.
R.A.? And you had, you had old Gene Hartline. Everybody's, ready to jump back in the water to go
To go
searching for us. Meanwhile, we
to
were
go
up
get
on the
the rookie.
jetty. Obviously, two young guys didn't follow the directions exactly, but but at the same time, I got a talking to that night. My
Yeah.
dad was he
Oh, I'm
was hot
sure.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's funny,
but
man.
yeah, live and learn. Anyways,
Live and
here we
learn.
are.
Yeah. Um, I do recall one time you telling me about something that happened on that particular movie where uh, you got burned a little bit.
Oh man. Oh, and that's day number two.
Number two.
Yeah, so day two of my stunt career, it was an enormous shot. They had the zeros flying over, but now we're on the ground, and all these guys are doing their air rams, doing
Uh-huh.
their ratchets. I'm taking a natural hit from a concussion of a bomb or
Yeah.
something. There was pyrotechnics everywhere. It was big
Hmm.
fireballs. Back then it was
Yep.
load
All
them up,
practical.
baby.
Yeah. Bigger the
And
better.
yeah, the bigger the better. And
Yeah.
and so these are all eye-opening experiences. Even
Yeah.
though I had been on set literally since I'm little, I'd never really been part of
This
something
kind of
that's
scenario.
massive like
Yeah.
this. And so there I am. I take my hit. I'm laying on the ground. My back is to one of seven cameras, and it is a giant vista shot. And I know
Hmm.
I'm 10 feet away from the closest camera. I
Wow.
can't move. I'm supposed to be dead.
Right.
Well, here comes this molten hot piece of plastic. They used to just pour
Can't imagine.
gasoline into a plastic bag, put a dead under it,
And just
blow
blow
it,
it
and
up.
then zwap. Well, here comes this piece of debris. And sure enough, I'm watching, it's going to land right on my hand, and boom, right
Of
on my,
course.
yeah, right on my left hand. And it's just sizzling. And all of a sudden, I had to develop some kind of twitch, and my finger starts moving just enough push a little
Go to
dirt
the
onto the on to put the fire out, but my skin, I'm just looking at it and it was just white glazed bubbles.
Oh,
And
ouch, man.
yeah, so
Mm.
cut, and the cut didn't happen for a minute. There was
Oh
a
my
whole
gosh,
lot of
dude.
things going on in the far background and the
Mm.
and yeah, so that's day number two is directly to the medic. And what I did learn out of that
Hey, but
was
you didn't ruin the shot. And
I
that's the
didn't
most
ruin the
important
shot.
thing.
No, no.
Imagine
And I don't even think
ah,
one can oh
good,
yeah.
good,
Yeah.
good.
Oh man. That would have been that would have been a
Yeah,
career ender. Think of
probably.
it. Yeah, for sure. I would
Yeah,
have been ridiculed right up.
yeah.
But it didn't work out that way. I held, I let it burn me.
Mm,
And then I got to, work the next couple days and fell in love with it. But yeah,
awesome.
that's my why. It's in my blood. I don't
Mm,
know. My dad, I was racing go-karts at 8 years old, 9 years old.
yeah.
Same thing with uh, motocross, and yeah. So
Mm.
I had
And now you get paid to do all that. Even better.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So after that movie, what are a couple of cool shows and gags you did kind of early on there in your career?
Oh man. Oh, as a stunt man or as a stunt coordinator or as
Stuntman. Let's do Stuntman
okay, as a
first. Yeah.
stunt man. So my career starts at 17. I got injured. I got injured on my second location. My first location was working in Mexico City on Amityville Horror 3D.
Oh, 3D.
3D. This is probably
It's got to be mid 80s.
1980. Yeah, 81.
81. Okay.
8081.
Yeah.
And the stunt coordinator was Chris Howell,
Mm.
who had been working with my father off and on. They're friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, so I got to go do
Cool.
the Mexico City thing. And that
Did you
was
have to do,
eye-opening. Oh, man.
what did you have to do in that movie?
Well, there was a demon in the floorboards or something, and
Uh-huh.
I played a young college guy with a Geiger counter
Uh-huh.
trying to figure out, where the protoplasm was coming from,
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
was. And I think I got killed by a flying bookcase. I think that
Flying
was my demise.
bookcase.
Yeah, the
Nice.
flying bookcase, and there were
They pulled that at you, or how did they
yep,
do that?
yeah, it
Okay.
was an effect,
Yeah.
back then. Well, still to this day, of course. But yeah, I got smashed by a bookcase. That was the end of noon on that one. But
Sounds
I was
painful.
in Mexico City for it's my first location job.
Cool.
Yeah, and that was great. And then on the second location job, I was on a movie called Up the Creek.
Up the creek.
Yeah,
I think I remember that.
and there was a special effect that went off, and it was quite a bit larger than I had anticipated. I didn't even know a thing about special effects back then. I
Yeah.
was so green. And yeah, I ended up getting fished out of the Deschutes River unconscious,
Oh,
and
really?
got to
Wow.
shore.
Unconscious.
Yeah, it was yeah, a safety
Knocked you
boat had to
out?
pull me out,
Oh,
and
man.
yeah, I was in bad shape. I don't remember much
Just the
of.
concussion of it
Yeah,
is what did it?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. My hair fell out.
Really?
Oh yeah, big time. I had several burns on my back,
Oh my
but
gosh.
it's back
That's a
then.
rough
It
one
was a
early on.
lot wilder times, and
Yeah.
things are a lot more. I mean, their insurance factors nowadays they
Mm,
just require a lot more diligence on
right.
a lot of people's parts. But
Right.
nonetheless, I have been ringing 24/7 since I'm 18 years old, and
Really?
yeah, if I
Mm,
can look at it as not positive, is that it was great for meditation. If
mm,
I get distracted, oof, go right to that me,
mm.
and
Interesting.
I could then for some reason everything else would just kind of fall away. So I mean,
Oh,
in a way, I'm lucky.
blessed, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So, just so you can still hear other stuff with that, but the ringing is
yeah
there
yeah.
as well. Okay.
There are tones where it's a little higher pitched that you drop a coin, I'm not going to
You're
hear it.
not gonna hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, couple bird calls that I'm missing out on. But it's stuff it's you deal with it, you
Right.
go on. I was
Yeah.
out of work maybe 6 months
Mm,
from that
from
one.
that one.
yeah, and it was young, and I was just getting going really
Yeah.
good. But it is stunts, and it's been a week or so in that
Oh,
hospital
wow.
before getting returning to Cali. Oh, a little twisted.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty big one to have to go through like
Yeah,
early
but
on in your
yeah,
career,
you
you
know
know.
what? As I think, I regardless, I caught fire right away again once I
Yeah.
got back into the saddle.
It didn't
Uh,
make you want to kind of double think and step
wow,
back
I
or
tell you
come out
what,
of it.
I really truly thought myself invincible. All right, I have had a hand burn, but so
Hmm.
what? I kept
Right.
working. Uh, I can't tell you how many times I crashed and burned on so many things
Mm,
and came out unscathed.
mm.
At age 16, I was doing a BMX jump, and I ended up waking up on a stretcher, getting lifted into an ambulance.
Oh,
So
jeez.
I did have that, but for some reason, that didn't deter me. But when I got
Mm.
this, this wasn't anybody's. This was so out of my
Unpredictable.
control.
Yeah, right.
And
It's not
when you
something you
don't,
messed up. It was just
yeah,
you couldn't do anything about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so Primacord, I think that every young stunt guy should know a little bit about effects, and what a D88 is
Hmm.
versus frisbee of Primacord
Hmm.
versus et cetera, et
Hmm.
cetera. It'd be well to just hang out if you're on a set with a effects guy that you've chummed up
Hmm.
with and ask the questions. Hey,
Right. Yeah.
explosions.
Yeah.
What do I need to know about them?
Yeah. That's
What
great
is
advice.
what does a Zerg kit do versus you know,
Yeah.
etc. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I found that to be something I definitely took to heart, and I started learning about
Mm.
that
Yeah. So after
up the
up the
creek.
creek,
Yeah.
yeah. What's going on after that?
Okay, so I caught my stride pretty quickly after that. It's funny, after I did that, my very first thing with my dad, I sat around for a couple months and was wondering what's going on. I
Mm.
haven't worked. And he's like,
Mm.
"Ah, you're so green. You better go and learn this business, become an extra."
An extra.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways,
Wow.
end up doing a couple, a couple jobs of
Yeah.
being an
Yeah.
extra. I went and applied to the Screen Extras Guild.
Screen Extras Guild.
There were different casting, central casting,
Oh,
and there were a couple others, but have some funny stories.
no
Stevie
way.
Picerni, and I, and my cousin, who was Kendall Orsatti, the head of SAGs, you know, we're all doing some extra work. And well, that didn't last too long. I got hooked up with some really good coordinators, Alan Gibbs, and
Oh,
and
nice.
like I say, I had already now started working on a couple of other features,
Uh-huh.
and but after that accident, it took me a couple weeks, couple months to get back into the groove, and I caught my stride
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Got to double some really lead guys,
Cool.
George
Cool.
Clooney, Val
Oh,
Kilmer, anybody
wow.
that was anywhere from 5'9" to 6'1",
That's about almost
Keanu
all.
Reeves,
Keanu Reeves.
yeah, Kirk Cameron,
Kirk Cameron.
yeah,
I know. Well, didn't you say you doubled Johnny Depp too?
Johnny Depp
I
on a couple movies,
uh,
Benny and June and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, both of which I also coordinated.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so I I was on fire,
Mm.
and as a stunt guy, I was also getting to work on Fall Guy. I had a lot of action
Oh
TV
man,
shows at the
what
time,
a time!
so
That
I was,
sounds
I was
awesome.
I was a very working young
Yeah,
stunt guy,
yeah.
and I was hanging out with some really fun-loving guys.
Well, I mean, you're like, you're in the business. Your dad's got things going. You're young. You look like half the guys in Hollywood. You're the
Yeah,
right size. You got all these skills, all this talent, and on top of that, that's when like they're making all these great action movies and action TV shows. Like that was just boom, 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 boom. It must have been awesome.
yeah. It was. I will say it was a golden heyday for me,
Mm.
anyways. Yeah, it seemed like every actor that was coming down the pipe there's not that many guys besides myself, my height at the time, at my age.
Really?
Like I say, the Sons of Stunts were, you know, Scott was out doubling Brad Pitt and et cetera, et cetera. So,
So you had your own Brat Pack, doubling the
yeah,
other Brat Pack.
yeah, it was, yeah, the
The
stunt
stunt
pack
Brat
and the
Pack.
Brat Pack. Yeah.
Wow. Unless you had a couple other shows that came to mind at that time, I wanted to see how that kind of transitioned into doing stunt coordinating.
Yeah, the stunt coordinating. Surprisingly enough, my first coordinating job did not come from my father, who at the time he was the king of the hill. He
Mm.
had so many shows, TV, feature. It didn't matter. He was on fire,
Mm.
both as coordinator and a second unit
Wow.
director. And
Yeah.
but it wasn't him. It was
Mm.
Bob Brawver. I had just joined ISA. Oh, I had been in it a few years, but Bob Brawver,
ISA is
International Stunt Association.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a quick group that formed by Alan Gibbs
Hmm.
and took along some really talented guys that started
About
it.
what year did that form?
I think ISA starts in, I want to say 1980 or
Okay.
81. And I believe I was in it from 81 till 85.
Okay.
And I was even secretary of that group for a minute,
Nice.
which was fun. 13 of us quit in one night. It was wild.
Whoa.
But that was
That
back
doesn't sound
then.
like a
What
good
was your
thing.
what was your what was your the first question? I mean the question you just asked.
How did you transition into the
Oh,
coordinating
right. So
side of things?
Bob Brawver was, I think he may have even been the president of ISA at the time, but he was going to direct a movie called Rush Week.
Rush
Rush Week.
Week.
It was one of
Mm.
those 80s
Oh yeah.
TNA uh,
One of those smut kind
thriller,
of.
killer,
Yeah, yeah.
college,
Oh yeah.
you
I
know,
remember those ones.
flash
I
a
know the type.
boob,
Mm.
spoopy things. But the reason I got that job was at the time I was a cyclist. I was training. I didn't know
Mm.
where I was going with the
What have
cycling.
you not done, dude?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
And
my
when I get
gosh.
into it, I go headlong
Yeah.
into it.
You really.
I'm starting to
Yeah.
have to pull the reins back on that because,
Mm. Well,
get a little older, you have to
you
be
got to
more.
pick your battles.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You got to pick
Yeah.
your battles. But uh, I was a cyclist at the time. I was training with a guy named David Brinton, who was a Olympian in the Seoul Olympics
Hmm.
in track pursuit, which is a cycling, a cycling event.
Right.
And I knew all of his friends. I was training with them, and so the best part of hiring me was I could easily pull 30 of the best bicyclists, cyclists in the area for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all competing pros.
Mm.
And so I got that together. There was also some broadsword work in there, and that wasn't too far a reach, but got
That's
to do
cool.
that. I think I was 25 or 6
25 or
when I
6.
coordinated that, I believe.
What's
Now
what's it like? What's one of the gags or something you had to do in that show,
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie?
Well, and that one, I think that the big gag in the cycling race
Hmm.
was that one of the guys is going to get pushed off to the side of the road,
Mm.
hit a pothole, go over, land in a girl's crotch. Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the TNA parts of it. And I believe that it was Andy Gill,
Andy
and we did
Gill.
everything old school then. We dug the hole,
Yeah.
that his front wheel was going to get lodged
Uh,
in. He's going to hit the front brake right as he hits that. He's going to go over. We'll put Joni in position in case it gets lucky and we actually can make
Actually,
contact kind of thing. It was stunt the old way, but
yeah.
yeah, it ended up. I forget if we did it in a cut or whatever, but I hope that shot's in the movie. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know if I've
Be
ever
fun.
seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
That'd be
truly
fun to
don't
go
know if
back and
I've
watch.
ever seen the movie, but
Uh-huh.
Rush Week,
Well, sure.
don't miss it. So that was my first coordinating, and then
Nice.
shortly thereafter, my father started introducing me to production meetings. My father was coordinating all these shows at MTM,
Mm.
and that was thanks to Abby Singer. The second shot to last. They say we're on the Abbey.
Oh,
This is
yeah,
the
yeah,
Abby
yeah.
Singer that we're talking about
Oh,
here, who
that's
was
named after this Abby singer. This Abby. Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So you have the Abbey of the Martini, but
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
Abby becomes pretty much like an uncle to me.
Oh,
He
man.
thought he could save a buck by hiring one stunt coordinator for all the shows that were being,
And
shot
that was your dad.
at MTM. Yes, and
Wow.
wow,
Wow.
that was a blossoming tree because all the producers, directors that went off and did other shows,
Mm-hmm.
movies, whatever, remembered my father, and
Mm-hmm.
my dad. His phone was ringing off the hook
Wow.
constantly. Um, and so luckily I was there to pick up the pieces and you know, the things that he didn't really want to deal with sometimes I would, get a shot at. And then this empire, I mean, I call it an empire only because it felt like that.
Mm.
Sometimes we were, my dad and I, between the two of us, maybe had between 10 and 20 shows running it, and some
Wow.
are, like Doogie Howser,
Yeah, yeah.
but still you have a, day on that thing in every 3 weeks, and
Yeah,
then you had the
that's
profile or pretender.
this. Yeah, that's like all through those like early '90s.
Oh
We're
yeah,
talking like right
oh
that
yeah,
time era. Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of them had quite a bit of action,
Yeah.
and so I got
Mm-hmm.
to start coordinating uh, probably on a very regular basis when I'm 27. I'm 61 now,
Mm-hmm.
but and then uh, that became a really cool thing because at that time, producers would kind of expect you to wear a couple hats.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Right.
you mind driving the car into that shot and sliding it? Just blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
and then and by the way, what's the budget for the show? Kind
Right.
of thing. uh, but that was then, and things have changed a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I got to coordinate a lot of TV.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the oddball show would come around, the like the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. My dad started that. We went to the production
Oh,
meeting,
wow. You got to
and then
coordinate
he
that.
walked away from it, and I ended up doing
Oh,
it.
man.
And the same with Benny and June, same thing. We started the movie together,
Oh,
and I think day one he was already moving on to
going on to
another
something else.
show.
What was one of your first big action feature films you coordinated?
Mm. I would say the biggest thing that I had coordinated at that time was oh yeah, Into the Sun.
Into the Sun.
Into the Sun, and it was starring Anthony Michael Hall,
Oh,
and Jack Gill was his double on that show, which
oh,
is really a fun story. I'll give you that in a second.
okay.
And
Fun.
Michael Pare, uh, who was one of those hot, young looking, great looking guys. But yeah, memorable scene in that one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, is dragging Jack behind a deuce and a half. Jack Gill, right?
Jack Hill. Yeah, yeah.
Jack Gill he's he is smooth. I'm just
Smooth.
gonna say Jack Gill has always been smooth,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm so happy I had a relationship with he and his brother in the past. I miss those guys.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
you said you're dragging him behind a
oh yeah,
deuce
we
and a half.
dragged him. I think
Explain what a deuce and a half
yeah.
is.
So it was
Is
one of those big army trucks that have the covering
the
over the
code right?
back, and
Mm-hmm.
you can fit 20 guys in the back
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
yeah,
things, and they're about 7 feet above the ground
yeah.
in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And but there was one scene where these two guys are trying to escape, and
Yeah.
Jack is behind this thing, and we were working in the Mojave Desert.
Oh,
It's thorns and
brutal,
thistles.
brutal.
It's brutally hot and
Yeah.
windy as heck. And there's 20 guys out there. So this is my first big
Yeah,
coordinating job
yeah,
where I have a lot of guys.
yeah.
I have a lot of
It was
responsibility.
this kind of like a war movie, or
Yeah,
basically.
an actor. It's a Top Gun reenactment type thing where the actor
Oh,
wants to
okay.
learn how to fly a jet.
Yeah, yeah.
The Air Force doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but they talk the head guy into it, and Michael Pare is the maverick kind of character
Oh,
who's going
okay.
to take this actor reluctantly while they're in, in Libya at the
Yeah.
time, and they fly into, they have some engine problems. They have
And
to
pull out.
pull, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pull the emergency exit,
Yeah.
and they jettison out, and they land in enemy territory. They're captured.
Uh.
He's trying to explain, I'm a big actor, and now they're seeing dollar signs, but they're going to get killed, and in the end, they have to steal a jet,
Uh-huh.
as
That sounds
and fly away
sounds
and
awesome.
take on the Red Baron of the Libyan army at
Of
the
the Libyan
time.
army.
I forget who the enemy was exactly, but something like that. And but it was big, and Jack
Hmm.
Gill, yeah. So the Deuce and Abs is giant, monstrosity of a machine
Yeah.
that Jack is getting dragged behind, and it looked just so miserable,
Yeah.
and
Did you have to do it a lot of times?
I think it was maybe two times, but it was a long run. It's
It was a
about
long run.
300-yard run through this encampment,
Ooh,
rocks, the
300
whole thing.
yards.
He had a quick release. I don't think he ever pulled it,
Oh man,
but
that's a long ways.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was the first time they said, "Hey, do you mind?" They gave me a camera and a small crew, and said, "Hey, do you mind going out and shooting all the pieces that we needed?"
Yeah, yeah,
And that was
yeah.
really my first taste of what it would be like to second unit direct. And
Mm,
that opened up a whole nother can of worms.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
So
So you got bit by the next bug
yeah,
already, huh?
yep.
Yeah.
Into the sun.
Into the sun.
Yeah.
Okay. What year was that about?
Ah, man. Yeah, you'd have me there. If I had to guess, I would say 1988
88. Oh,
ish.
that's pretty early. I mean, for
Yeah,
yeah, a
I
big
think
movie
I'm.
like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was in my 20s
Yeah.
still on that movie,
Wow.
but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
IMDb, that's why it's there.
That's why it's there. Yeah.
It's there.
Um. So then after that, you were you doing a lot of feature coordinating in the '90s too, or are you mostly doing television at that time? Or
It was a mixed bag,
mixed bag?
and I hadn't completely abandoned the stunt thing.
Yeah.
When my father would have
Just
movies
real
like.
quick, I was in LA in the '90s trying to break into stunts
Mhm.
and hustle, and we tried to find you guys so many times,
Yeah, we were the
but
ghosts.
we
We were the
could
ghosts. Just too
never
many shows.
find
You
you.
can, you know.
We'd show up to this as new Orsatti here, Ernie Orsatti.
Yeah,
No, no. Oh, damn it.
yeah,
Go to the
yeah. It
next
was
one.
all about getting a contract
Yeah,
and
yeah.
filling
Oh, I
your
get it.
residual
I
pot.
get it. Yeah.
But in answer to your question, yeah, I think it was a mixed bag.
Mm.
I still loved performing, man, and so if my father had a film, and we did the Hot Shots movies, and
Oh, I love those.
yeah,
Those
and
are
those are
awesome.
fun. They're so You're a big family, and
Yeah.
the director was so collaborative. If there was a line he that somebody was saying, and
Uh-huh.
he'd just look around the crew and just say, give me a line," like, and yell that out, and the caterer would yell like, "You're throw him a sausage." Yeah, say that line, Charlie Sheen. Say that line, throw him a sausage. It was so fun. Those were so fun.
Oh, that's awesome,
Yeah,
man. I
those
would
were
love to work on
epic,
something like that.
epically fun. Worked on a few Naked Guns.
Oh, yeah. Those are awesome. I
Yeah,
love those ones too.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think they'd fly nowadays, but maybe they would. And you
I
never
don't know,
know.
man. I don't know. Me and my dad loved them though.
Oh yeah,
When we went to a movie night, it was a Naked Gun movie.
yeah, yeah. They
I
were
love
they were
them.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I got to play around on those
So,
wacky shows, and then going back, and then the good thing about TV is you knew when hiatus was coming up,
right.
and you could almost be planning ahead of time. And quite honestly, I was always searching for the next job back then. Yeah, if a show was coming to an end, I'd be on the phone starting to make calls to
Mm-hmm.
get the next thing lined up. And
Yeah.
so that happened, luckily, many times in the course of shows, hiatus,
Mm-hmm.
jumping on a feature. A lot of times features weren't a 6 month
Right.
sentence sometimes, or
Right.
a yeah.
Yeah.
But they You know, you could expect 2, 3 months on a film. A
Mm,
lot of times they just bring you in for the gags that were
right.
necessary. You wouldn't get carried necessarily, but
Mm,
uh, yeah. So I mean, you fill the resume really quick that way. But
mm,
nowadays, I could say I like how it is nowadays with some of the longer shoots where you really get to lock in as a
mm,
family and really looking out for each
mm.
other. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you really do develop tight bonds with everybody when you're
yeah,
working that long together and on location or something, and you're just seeing those people all the time. You really, yeah, like
yeah,
family.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Of course, you got that a little bit on some of the shows back then. You know, you
Yeah.
get a little longer run, but uh, I certainly had fun during all aspects of this career of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
short ones, the fast, the long ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind uh, telling us about some of those features around that time that you got to do. Um, I mean, if we're talking, well, I know like early 2000s, you had a lot of stuff. Like you traveled over to Thailand, I think, for some shows to do
Oh yeah.
over there.
Uh, yeah. Before then, let's say I'm just taking you from my now I'm in the 90s, right? With a few of these things, or no, I
Mm.
haven't even gotten to the 90s. The 90s is something like Aliens Resurrection,
Oh, okay.
which at the time was, I think,
Yeah.
it's a $90 million movie back when,
Wow. That's
$20 million
a
movies were
lot.
much more the
Yeah.
norm. It was
Yeah.
a big one. My father was coordinating and shot second unit on that, and got to employ a lot of young new guys
Mm-hmm.
on
Yeah.
on a couple of these shows. But then in the 2000s, yeah. So I had a really good spat of TV series from 94, 95
Mm-hmm.
to 2002 or 3. They were great. I got to, my kids I got to be around home.
Mm.
I was doing a TV series called Charmed.
Oh yeah, I remember Charmed. Yeah.
Yeah, I had worked on that from the remake of the pilot. Alyssa Milano was not originally cast on
Oh really?
Charmed. Yeah, she came in, so they
Mm.
had to reshoot the pilot, and that's when my
Mm.
father and I started it. And then I think I was on it from that point on all the way till the very last episode,
Mm.
and so that kept me quite busy. Eight years of that, and
Yeah.
in between there, I could slip over and do a little episode of Scrubs or The
Mm-hmm.
Closer
Play
or
day play
The
here, day play there.
Pretender. No, I just left The Pretender off with Chad Stahelski.
Yeah.
New young hot stunt guy,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Oh
he's doubling the lead guy for us. And
yeah. Yeah.
uh, but in fact, I think that the Chad and Dave Leach got to coordinate, I think, some of their first things
Really?
for my dad and I. Yeah,
Wow.
definitely. Uh,
Was this before Chad went and did the Matrixes?
oh yes, it was. Yeah,
It
and
was. Yeah.
yeah, and that was so. That was a fun story because I believe it was my father that had actually gotten the call that there was an interview, and
Uh huh.
he had sent Chad to, after beating him up, I think during that day, sent him off to go do that audition, and Chad,
Oh
gets
really?
it. Yeah, but now the crazy thing is
Wow.
I'm doing another show,
Uh huh.
and Chad was the lead guy on it,
Yeah.
and I remember he drove out. We were working way outside of LA,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed up and explained the whole situation,
Uh huh.
and I I was thrilled for him.
Yeah.
We've been working almost daily
Because
together.
he went to the audition that your dad told him about.
Yeah,
He ended up getting
yeah,
the role to double Keanu
yeah,
Reeves, which means he'd have to leave your show to go to New
yeah,
Zealand,
yeah,
right, to film. Yeah.
yeah. So we were sharing a lot of good guys, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I hope nobody took offense to that, but
Right.
you get a good guy and you just want
You
to
want to
hold
hold on
on to
to
him
him.
and
Yeah.
make him your own. Well, that
Right.
was not going to be the case, and it was quite obvious right away. What? Editing? What? Yeah, you can teach me how to edit. Why not? Let's go.
Yeah.
But
Oh, he taught you how to edit?
Yeah, well,
Right?
yeah, he actually introduced me to what was it at that time? It wasn't Final Cut. It was Premiere. It
Oh,
was
okay,
Adobe
Premiere.
Premiere
Yeah,
when you could buy
Adobe.
the yeah.
Yeah.
We were doing the show The Pretender, and I remember he asked, "Do you mind if I ask questions?" Well, that was one of the very first things my father told me. He's like, "Go ask questions. I want you to know what everybody does
Mm.
in the on a set.
Mm-hmm.
You really should know."
Yeah.
And I recommend that for all young guys too,
Yeah. Yeah.
is really know what everybody does. It takes
Mm.
a lot to make a movie, and
Right. Yeah.
we're not all that precious or special
Yeah.
when in considering all the other
All the other
departments, what they
departments.
do.
Yeah. Some of the
Uh,
unsung heroes that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he asked if he. I'm like, absolutely, that's great, and sure enough, took that to a whole nother
Mm.
echelon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I'm doing these TV shows, and my show Charmed is winding down, and I get to go travel to Thailand to do a film, and
Mm.
that's in 2006. It was called Bangkok Dangerous. It was with
Mm.
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
Yeah, I was
Good one.
co-coordinating with Eddie Yancek, who was Nick's double.
Double. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was a great trip. He took me there. I
Was that your first time to be
It
over
was
in Asia?
my first time to Far East
To the Far
at
East.
all,
Yeah.
and I mean that is,
How'd you like it?
oh wow, I can't even begin to tell you what a change in
Mm-hmm.
my life that trip meant to
Mm-hmm.
me, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was wonderful. Anyways, we knocked it out of the park. I'd say I got
Mm-hmm.
back a couple months, maybe 1 or 2 months. Dave and Chad and Damon Caro had started 8711, is fledgling group, and they were starting.
What was it like when it first started? Was it just the guys working out together, or?
I think the original purpose for 8711 was,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's an address, 8711.
Yep.
Excuse me, Aviation, 8711 Aviation
Aviation
Boulevard,
Boulevard.
uh, and they were using it primarily to train actors, and that was all of a sudden becoming a thing, and it
Oh,
was
okay.
largely promoted by them. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, there wasn't anybody doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time learning how to shoot and cut, which is giant.
Right. What about what year is this?
Oof. Um, Well, for me, getting asked by those guys to join was 2007, early seven. So I'm going to say 2005,
Okay.
six,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I believe that was the main purpose there. You have to ask
Mm.
them, but nonetheless, they were starting to get offers to second unit direct and
Wow.
coordinate some bigger shows.
Huh.
Rambo came along, and on Bangkok Dangerous, Dave Leach had been the fight coordinator on there, so he and I spent some time in
Yeah.
Thailand together already,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I guess he had recommended that they needed it. As they put it on that phone call, it was, we got a lot of Indians, but we need a chief. And so Chad and I went up and did Rambo in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Awesome. That's
And
John Rambo, that movie that
yeah,
just came out. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the
John
blood and
Rambo.
guts one, the one that
Yeah.
really,
It
I
it
would say
was.
it was kind of groundbreaking in a sense.
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, I remember watching that movie and just thinking to myself how realistic everything looked. It was just, I mean, it was almost whoa, because I'm used to seeing how Hollywood portrays explosions and people flying, and it's very glamorous, and that was not
Yeah,
glamorous.
I
It
can
was
take you back
whoa.
on that one. I remember sitting in office with Chad Knight and in Thailand and watching what I would call snuff films. There were, the
Oof.
real deaths of,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
somebody gets hit with a 50 cal. half their backs being blown out,
My
and they're
God.
turning into
You
protoplasm.
had to watch that?
And it's just dropped to the ground kind of thing. So Sly was Sylvester Stallone was directing. He was all about real and
Yeah, yeah.
violent. He really wanted some violence in there, and but in
What?
reality, we were portraying what was happening right
Right
across
there.
the border. We could hear the gunfire. We were
Yeah.
in Chiang
Yeah,
Mai
he was really
jungles.
trying to just show how horrific it
Yeah,
is, I
absolutely.
think,
Yeah,
because we do get so many movies that kind of glorify this violence, and it's not like that. It's terrible, and I think that was the point. He wanted to show that,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So that was kind of the note that we shared, that wanted to make it real and
Hmm.
gritty and
Right.
not sensationalized in terms of that. Just death.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I recall a couple phone calls from Sly
Uh-huh.
saying, "I don't want none of that bloop bloop stuff. I want none of that sissy stuff because I want babies pitchforked in the fire."
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, this is what was happening in Burma at the time, and
Oh, wow.
atrocities. I'm
Wow.
I'm saying this with a smile only because I can picture Sly's expression of it, but
Hmm.
there were actually uh, there were actually threats made against crew members and Sly, and I
Mm.
recall somebody saying, "Oh yeah, your name's on the list
Oh
for
man.
crossing over the border into Burma, which was 20 miles away."
Wow. I mean, why why would they put your name on the list? Like,
Well, apparently we're representing a movie that is
oh, that's a
portraying what they don't
portraying
want
what
us
they
to
don't they're
portray.
against. I gotcha.
Yeah, the
Mm, okay.
atrocities of war, this
Right.
genocide.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that was so Thailand was there. I was back in Thailand. So in '06, '07, I spent yeah, 8 months in Thailand, nine
Mm,
months in Thailand.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
has an
anyways,
effect.
but that parlayed into many things.
Yeah.
Dave and Dave and Chad graciously took me
Well,
along for a
that must have been kind of how you built the relationship with Sylvester Stallone, too, right? That
that
led
was
to
that was
Expendables.
that was the beginning of a really fun relationship,
Yeah.
I would say. Got to do, boy, I've never really been counted. I think 5 films with Sly.
Oh wow, that's a
Yeah, I'm
lot.
thinking Rambo, Expendables 1, 2, Bullet to the Head, Escape Plan.
Escape
There may be
Plan.
one more in there that I'm missing, but that's when I, get to really work with Chad and Dave a lot.
Mm,
Uh, because we're working on all these Millennium film productions.
mm.
Avi Lerner and Danny Lerner, had this company, and we
So those
were,
guys would be kind of second unit directing, and you would coordinate,
yeah, that it,
and
it,
that's how you
it ended
guys
up
went around.
working quite a bit like
Yeah.
that, where I'd
Okay.
get out there and start the ball
Mm,
rolling, get the teams together,
right.
uh, and then you know we talk about the team that we're going to bring up from America, et
Mm,
cetera, because a lot of
mm,
these things were done in foreign lands. And
mm.
yeah, so I got to coordinate quite a few shows where they would come in, direct second unit, knock it
Yeah.
out of the park,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well, I mean, Expendables 1 and 2. That was huge action
yeah, you know what?
movies, man.
I
Like,
I, I have to revisit those because I think that we did a lot of big gags on that thing
yeah,
that I just
huge
can't
gags
even
on those.
remember. It flies by.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing those movies in the theater and just like, wow,
Yeah.
that was awesome. They
Yeah.
did some cool stuff
I,
in
I
those.
agree. Yeah,
A lot
and
of, I mean, practicals, and it was still really big back then.
so much of
Like
it, and
some
and the
CG,
beauty of that was that's where I really got to see how this 8711 thing worked,
Yeah.
and because all the actors were coming through there to learn the choreo that we're going to
Mm,
apply,
mm,
3 months down the line in New
right.
Orleans, even though we're
Right.
starting the movie in where were we in Brazil,
Oh, cool.
so it really becomes apparent that of what benefit this rehearsal time with actors,
Yeah.
how much more you can shoot and get out of it really became
Did
apparent.
did I don't know if you know the answer, but did Chad kind of grow into that because he was the guy that taught Keanu Reeves a lot of stuff on The Matrix, and then he just kind of brought that back with him and
Well, I
incorporated
think,
that?
I mean, I don't want to talk out of line on this, but from my recollection, it was on The Matrix, the Wachowskis had a very set idea of how things were going to be shot. They had
Mm-hmm.
employed Wu Ping
Mm-hmm.
and so Chad, after leaving The Pretender,
Mm-hmm.
was able to benefit from seeing really how a Hong Kong type
Movie is
uh,
made, shot.
team is team formulates,
Oh.
creates, and
Mm.
being. I'm guessing that that was a big part of it. Even though
Mm-hmm.
we were all kind of martial art fight movie nuts,
Right.
especially those guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they already had a very good idea of it, how to
Mm-hmm.
shoot it. They were already
Mm.
doing a lot of prevising of things
Wow.
like that.
Invaluable experience, man.
Yeah,
Jeez.
and so then they get to work with the masters of the Hong Kong
Yeah.
martial art world and make it their own and make it
Mm.
and Americanize it and
Mm-hmm.
it was groundbreaking
Oh yeah.
definitely. There was a time when I was I would go and I'd be on 7 different shows, TV
Mm.
shows, and they'd all request the same thing. Oh, we want that Crouching Tiger or the Matrix. We
Right.
want that Matrix
Yeah.
look.
Yeah. I
And
remember those
that's a
days.
tall order because
Yeah.
feature film time and energy spent on making a scene happen versus TV
Versus
time.
TV
Yeah, it
time.
was like, yeah, okay, good luck.
Good
We'll do
luck.
our best.
Yeah.
But yeah, that became quite the
The popular
bar.
bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very certain style that was very popular. I remember everybody wanted it, liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So that's about early 2000s.
Yeah, so
About
2007
2007. Yeah.
and then 2000, yeah, as we roll into the 2000s, I'm still working for the most part features.
Mm.
There was a slew of Millennium films that came through. Did a couple Nick Cage movies,
Mm. Yeah.
Stolen, Trespass, all of these out of the
Okay.
Millennium,
Yeah.
you know, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, out of
Yeah.
the
They.
Millennium stable, I'll say.
Mm.
Uh, there was a lot. The Mechanic.
Oh yeah. They were pumping them out back then,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
And
there's so many
good.
going
They were
on at one
good
time. Did
shows.
Conan the Barbarian in
Yeah.
Bulgaria. Then I went right back to Bulgaria to do Expendables 2
Yeah. Yeah.
after doing, one or two little things in New Orleans, and it didn't seem
Uh,
LA was happening anymore at all. But
right.
uh,
I remember that.
so that's where I'm kept quite busy
Mm-hmm.
between 2006 and 2012.
Mm.
In between there, I meet on Expendables 1 this amazing person that becomes my wife.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that is my late wife.
Yes.
So that will always be a very dear movie to me. The
Mm.
Expendables, the first one.
Mm.
We started
What
in
was
Brazil.
Pan doing on the movie? How did you meet her? Or
So yeah, so the movie starts in Brazil.
mm.
We did all our prep. We I had prepped New Orleans part of it,
Yeah.
flown to Brazil. I forget what Chad was doing at the time, but I think he was back in LA. Anyways, sorted things out in Brazil. Then I was going to fly back to New Orleans. The movie's going to start.
Uh huh.
Uh, Prepping up, getting ready to get out there. But I believe that our very first shot was out in the ocean
Uh huh.
on Expendables 1 uh, off the coast of Brazil.
Okay.
And Jet Li was supposed to, we had choreographed a fight, actually.
Oh
Chad and
really?
the boys had put together a really good Jet Li fight. Jet Li
Wow.
versus Dolph Lundgren,
Oh, I
and
remember that.
and yeah,
Yes.
and Corey
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yuen, who was Jet's fight choreographer
Yeah.
slash second unit director,
Right, right.
he's one of the big I don't know,
Kahunas.
three or four
Yeah.
uh, of of that era
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah.
group. But he had been with Jet for forever. Well, Pan, my wife, my
Mm-hmm.
late wife, had just been his first AD on a second unit that he had shot on a Jet Li movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
So
she
she
came
was
from
a
the,
first AD.
yeah, she was the first AD on
Hmm.
that film. She had been
Okay.
a producer on other things
Uh,
and second, it works a little different in China,
yeah.
but nonetheless, she went up from PA to second to
Mm-hmm.
first to producer pretty
Right, right,
quick.
right.
Um, but he had, on a whim, had asked her if she had wanted to help out. Jet's going to go to New Orleans. Why don't you come along for 6 weeks?
Hmm.
Yeah, like I say, they were originally supposed to do the fight with us in Brazil, but through some nefarious acts, if I remember right, our camera truck had been broken into and held hostage for an exorbitant amount of money, and so production
What?
decided, you know, we've been 5 weeks in
Wow.
Brazil. Let's get the hell out of here. It
Yeah.
it was too mafia run, and
Right. That sounds
it's so.
sketchy, man.
Anyways, I had a great time. There was
Yeah.
no complaints. It was fun. And I'd say the
Yeah.
team that we brought along, which most of the guys now are big coordinators, second unit directors that
Yeah.
were part of our team on that. I think everybody had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but so she was, and his
His
assistant
assistant.
slash producer slash interpreter. She spoke
Mm,
fluent English,
okay.
and she knew Jet from previous,
Mm,
and so there was a group of, I think, six of the Chinese that came
mm-hmm.
to uh, New Orleans, and that's where I met her. I
Mm,
saw her. It was love at first sight. I asked her to marry me on
mm.
our second date. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it
that's
was
awesome.
that was a that was a whirlwind
Mm,
experience. But that's how that starts.
yeah.
So, but that's in 2009, and so 9 to 12 we working back to back to back
Mm.
on all these Millennium films.
So we talked about kind of already, kind of through the 90s era.
Yeah.
And we kind of got up to um, like the mid 2000s and that area, like 2009 or 10, um, where you're really on a roll. You're doing a lot of the the Millennium production company films and that sort of thing. And you were pretty hot at that time, right? But I know that there was also other stuff going on for you at that time.
Oh yeah, but
Um,
this story would have to back up a few years to
yeah,
really get the
get
fuller
the
picture
full
of it.
picture.
And
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to go down this road? It's me and religion and change of life and all that.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Okay,
We are the philosophical fall
all
guys,
right.
after all. So, yeah, we can kind of transition into that if that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
cool.
mean
Okay.
I'm kind of an open book, and I will state a disclaimer here that none of what I say at this point can reflect the appreciation that I have now for
Mm,
everything that's come down in my life.
mm,
Honestly,
mm,
I have the perspective that I see things from now is, you know,
yeah,
very different
yeah,
than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so on and so forth. And it's the same with everybody, I believe.
yeah.
But in my case, I have gone down a lot of rabbit holes
Mm,
to have arrived at a place where I'm really at ease and feel like I'm really enjoying a
mm,
piece of paradise
mm,
at this very moment.
mm.
And uh, yeah, I feel that pinch myself. Not that I'm a real person, anyways, but I pinch
Yeah.
my myself that this character gets to play this amazing role and have the experiences that I have had. Wow,
Yeah.
that's and
Yeah.
in the end, I think it's a truly great gift
Mm,
I've
yeah.
been given.
That's very
Yeah, so
eloquent the
that's
way
my
you put that.
disclaimer.
That's your disclaimer. Okay.
So as we go into marching down religion, just yeah. So age 4, my father and mother get a divorce.
Hmm.
My mother has been proselytized to by her sister Jacqueline, her older sister, who has just come into contact with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, okay.
And so this form of Christianity is introduced to our family. And so from ages 1 through 4, I am raised in it. My parents get a divorce when I'm 4. It's, for whatever reason, I never did understand or hear or know why.
Really? Oh,
Nope,
wow.
neither
Huh.
party ever brought it up again. I lived with my mom, who uh, who remarries when I think 6 years
It's
old.
really weird how your story kind of parallels your dad's in a way.
It's similar.
Yeah.
Oh, in this regard,
In this
absolutely.
regard, yeah.
Yeah,
With the divorce and you living with your mom and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So my mother is getting remarried. She's a kooky, zany, attractive woman.
Hmm.
My father is
Real quick, what did your mom do? Just curious.
in turn. She did some runway modeling actually.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh,
some
wow.
commercial work. Yeah.
Wow. Dang.
Uh,
She
yeah,
must have
she
been a
was
hottie.
one of the French hookers on the movie Paint Your Wagon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she had lines in the whole thing in
Huh.
that movie.
Huh.
That was a famous movie back then. That was
Yeah.
when the Stuntmen's Association and a Young Stunts Unlimited. Oh no,
Yeah.
not even yet. Uh, were had a whole bunch of stunt guys. I think they shot that up in Oregon or Washington. But
Huh.
she was gone for a long period of time. I was raised largely by my grandmother through my youth.
Hmm.
I could speak French fluently at one point because I'm
Really?
half French, half Italian,
Wow.
and my grandmother spoke French.
You must have great
Um,
taste in food then.
uh-huh.
You must have great taste in food.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a foodie. But uh, and then on my dad's side, he's newly disfellowshipped from this church,
Hmm.
and a very good-looking guy, and Hollywood is open to him. He's a hot model,
Mm.
uh, and he would show up with a different woman every other weekend that
Both
he
guns
got
ablazing, huh?
visitation, and he was always late, and he was partying up with he
Yeah.
was hanging out with with his brother and Charlie Pacerni, and
Oh,
even
man.
though he never was part of Stunts Unlimited back in any day, he never joined a group and recommended me to never join a
Mm.
group. He nonetheless hung out with, that was, I
That was
think,
his crew.
the gang that I remember as a
Yeah.
kid. I remember being at Glenn Wilder's when I was 4 years old, 5 years old.
Glenn Wilder. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, cool, man.
but
So your dad's living it up. He's
yeah.
just
So
going
he's
to town.
he's sowing his oats out
Hmm.
there, doing his thing, experimenting with some uh, different mind altering plants and
Oh,
drugs and
really?
things. Yeah, that's what he told me.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm back in, as my mother never gets disfellowship from the church. And so from ages, I don't know, birth through 8 or 9, I am raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm.
From 9 till 12, I think my parents quit altogether.
Mm.
My dad was he was gallivanting at the time, and then I had my mom, who her and her new husband Hilton, who I love still, which is amazing. My stepfather would be quitting the church around 9, and at
Mm.
that point, I was a pretty wild guy. Scott
Oh,
Wilder
okay.
and I got booted out of our first they were the first ones to ever get booted out of this school, Valley
Oh, yeah.
Garden. Yeah,
Kicked out
and
of school,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, we got caught with our hand in the cookie jar, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, we went to elementary school together, Scotty and I.
That's cool.
Yeah, we
That's cool.
played. Yeah,
Best
we're
buddies, huh?
always blood brothers. But
Yeah.
uh, so then I am no longer in the church, and I get kicked out of that school. I go to the next school. I get kicked out of that school. I'm now almost 12 years old. My mother is in Palm Springs when the principal of the second school, Brentwood Elementary, calls her and tells her that I'm truant again. And so she calls me from Palm Springs and go live with your dad. I never want to, don't step foot in this house again. She
Really?
was
She did
pretty
over the
upset.
phone. She kicks you out.
Yeah, kicked out. Oh, I
Wow.
got kicked out the first time 9 years old.
Got kicked out at
Yeah,
9?
9 years old was my first kicked out. Getting kicked out. She wanted me back, bought me back. Really,
Oh,
my dad's a starving actor, really living in a one-bedroom apartment. This,
yeah.
stepdad's up in the hills in Encino, and yeah, so that decision
Yeah.
ends up being I went back to Encino, got back on my my XR 75, and
Nice.
uh, but uh, they that door opened to me of wildness. And then all of a sudden, when my dad gets custody of me, he
Mm.
decides he wants to go back into the church. So
Oh
I
no.
had three years of not being any part of anything, and
Anything.
then
And
and
back with the
wild.
handcuffs.
My hair was down to here.
Wow.
Wild child, and then my dad gets custody of me. They cut my hair immediately. That was the first order of
First,
business.
yeah.
And man, I had to toe the line. All of a sudden, I was Jehovah's Witness again.
Wow.
And uh,
That's a like whew, jump into cold water, huh? Like slap in the face. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I gotta say, my dad was pretty. He was a pretty uh, cool dude
Mm.
when it came to it. Although his expectations were, he was toe the line kind of guy
Yeah.
as well. Uh, was he as dogmatic as some of the elders of the church? No, he was. I never felt like, if he said at curfew's 10, if I came back at 10:15, I didn't
Mm.
think I'd be,
Wasn't the end of the
possibly
world. Yeah.
castrated or anything. But yeah, so he was quite fair that way overall. But so I'm raised Jehovah's Witness till I'm 40. I mean, until I make it my own.
And they're
And
obviously okay with people being part of their church, but working in the industry, in the
this is a
entertainment
tricky
industry,
one,
huh?
and I'm glad you bring it up because you
Because
know
don't aren't they against watching movies or something?
it. Well, I would say on the extreme side of things, yes,
Yeah.
there would be those that would refrain from anything. I mean, R-rated movies were never
Mm.
were you know you would never tell another publisher or
Yeah.
brother or sister in the
Right.
congregation that you ever watched that movie, let alone I was the guy shooting the guy
Here-
and kicking him in the head and gouging
Right.
his eye out and
Yeah.
putting a corkscrew in his
Just
cheek. And
didn't
yeah, that was all me.
don't
But
ask, don't tell kind of thing.
so you're always dancing on, I must have been pulled into the back room by the elders.
Yeah.
I can't even, umpteen times.
Mm.
Some for just holding a gun in a shot. Well, we saw you in this shot where,
Wow.
why are you watching the show? Is what I
You're not
really
supposed to
wanted to
watch
say
it.
so
Yeah.
many times.
You're not supposed to
Well,
watch
yeah.
it.
One elder comes up to me one time and says, "I saw this movie last night. It was the most demonic movie, and then I noticed that your name was in the credits." It's like, yeah, it was some David Lynch
Awkward.
horror movie, I think. It was, yeah, and
But yeah, he's watching it.
yeah, he's watching it, but he's admonishing me, not to partake and be part of.
Uh,
Uh, so a lot of funny dichotomies
mm,
in life,
yeah.
and I that is definitely one of them. To be a stuntman, and not only just a stuntman, but you know, a, I don't want to say top tier guy, in
But
any
that you are.
homage to myself, but at
Yeah.
the same time,
You
I
are.
mean, we had a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So to be that guy, and and I mean the kicker to
Not
me
only were
is
you like probably a guy in those shows, but you were the
I'm
coordinator on a lot
coordinating,
of
I'm
them.
coming up,
Yeah.
I'm creating, guys getting curb sandwiched, on American History X with,
Oh my God.
and then going into the Kingdom Hall and,
Yeah.
yeah, one of my favorite thing is, so I'm doubling Freddy Krueger on,
Freddy Krueger?
yeah,
You
yeah,
doubled
so I
Freddy?
doubled him on a few of those
I
things.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, I think I shared cred with God, what was his name? Rick Barker, Dan uh, Dan Bradley would run some of those, but
Yeah.
anyways, I doubled Freddie. I remember one I had
He's like the
invited.
most demonic,
Yeah, I had
evil
invited
person.
a friend of mine from the congregation, and so Robin England was this the
The
actor
actor.
that played Freddie,
Mm.
and he had to go to London for whatever reason, and I had been doubling him doing this capoeira type fight, and
Which Freddy was it? Do you remember which one it was?
I think I did Freddy's Dead, and I think I want to say 4 and 5 or 3 and 4, 3 and 5,
Okay.
but I worked on, I think, more than that.
Yeah.
Eh, you know, did some driving, I fell down probably 500 stairs one night
Oh.
in one, down a flight of outdoor fire escape stairs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, did that so many
Ooh.
times all night long. But anyways,
Wow.
so Robert Robert comes up to me at the end of one night and says, "Hey, Noon, I pitched to the company that you could be me, so they're going to shoot all my side of the action, and while I'm in London, you could do all the, so I get the lines, I get the all the
Wow.
stuff. So I'm in
Full
full
Freddy makeup.
Freddy makeup, doing all the off lines for this actor, which I can't remember what the scene was. I think it was a big black guy with it was a baseball bat. Anyways, uh, and so I had invited one of my congregation members
hmm
for whatever reason. Well, he was in the business and
Yeah.
trying to get further in the business. No names, but
Yeah.
uh, and I'm sitting there with like I'm counting down the ways that they've tried to kill Freddy, and
Uh-huh.
I'm using my hand,
Yeah.
and I've got the glove,
Yeah.
and I'm cutting off what is prosthetic fingers,
Fingers.
right? And every cut finger I cut off, and then it ends up, of
With
course,
a
and this
middle
is my
finger.
my favorite one, and it's my finger, and all I could think about is what this guy must think right
Thinking.
now. I am a Jehovah's Witness. I answer at the Kingdom Hall. I give talks. I say prayers for the whole congregation,
Oh
and here
man.
I am, Freddie, the what is he, the bastard child of 1,000 maniacs or something like
Something.
that, with
Yeah.
my F
Yeah.
finger doing that, and there's so many times, and then I'm playing in a
Wow.
in a funk punk band, 30 Foot Whipper, with my
Nice.
brothers,
Nice.
and none every, talk about a double life.
Hmm.
Yeah, but regardless, I really appreciate the time I spent as a Jehovah's Witness. It was invaluable,
hmm
and I met lovely people, and
hmm
uh,
Well, I mean, I know you're not the only one in the industry that works the industry, and I mean, like Michael Jackson, wasn't Prince a Jehovah's Witness too, or something? And
yeah, yeah,
I
and
remember
I,
Michael
I
Jackson had
I
to
had
put
quite a
that.
relationship with Michael because of being a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, that if I look
Wow.
at pluses of it, like outstanding pluses, I would say the friendships that I bonded with a few people, that Eddie Yancek is, I he'll always be in my heart. I
Yeah.
mean, regardless
Yeah.
if we ever get to work together or not,
He
I
went to the
love him
same
dearly.
Kingdom Hall you did.
What's that?
He went to the same Kingdom Hall that you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and not all the time, but yeah, for most our younger adult life, we were together a lot. And Michael Jackson, I mean, I was very, very close to him.
Wow.
I had, I would say, the keys to the Encino Havenhurst house at one point, where I could, wave to the,
What?
yeah, where I could just wave to the security guys. They knew who I was. I was
Wow.
in there,
That's
I had
crazy, dude.
several meals with them, and Knocked on a lot of doors with Michael.
I can't
Yeah, knocked
imagine
on a
Michael.
lot of doors with Michael.
I can't not.
Hi, I'm Joe.
He's
He'd wear this little mustache.
like,
He
wow,
he was
that
he
just
was
blows my mind.
adorable and a really
But that
dear
must have
part
been
of.
before he had really gotten big, though, huh?
Oh, this is no. Well, this is he's already done Off the Wall. He's already the megastar that he is.
Uh-huh.
And Thriller, where he I was there for many of his recordings on
Right.
Thriller.
Oh,
I
wow.
He hands me a pair of spoons and says and pushes the song that was going on and
Mm.
record on his in his Havenhurst house. He had this giant music studio,
Yeah.
and he gives me spoons, and the song was I want to start something. And
Uh-huh.
so whether or not that track made it on there,
Yeah.
because I would always beat on my car. He loved driving in my car. It was this little Subaru XL. We would never take his rolls. We'd always go knock
Jamming
on
down in the
doors in my little
Subaru
Subaru
with Michael Jackson.
with MJ,
That's
and
crazy, dude.
he shared a lot of heart to heart thoughts in life, which
Yeah.
is I
Well, maybe you had that in common. I mean, he was a thriller where he's playing like this
yeah.
demonic character too, you know?
Oh
So,
yeah. Well, so funny enough,
uh-huh.
he calls me right after he was to make a what did the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society require of him is something like a detraction uh, of Thriller. That was their first request,
Mm.
is what he had mentioned to me.
Wow.
And yeah, he called me up, and I hadn't spoken with him in months.
Mm.
And out of the blue, I get a call from him, and he said, "Hey, would you like to go out in service?" And I said, "Oh yeah, of course." And
Yeah.
so I drove to his Kingdom Hall, I was in Sherman Oaks, he was in West Woodland Hills or East Woodland Hills, West Woodland Hills. And I went and knocked on doors with him, and man, he was pouring his heart out about this whole Thriller debacle with
Yeah.
him,
Did people
and
recognize him as Michael Jackson when he came to this door?
oh, I have a few stories. One the most memorable one was he would wear a mustache. We knock on the door. He'd
He's wearing a
introduce
fake
himself as
mustache?
Joe. He still had the high pitched voice.
Yeah.
And one girl, and we were
He
there
wasn't
with
white
our
yet, though.
Watchtower and Awakes. And what's that?
He wasn't white yet, though.
No, I mean, think of Off the Wall, but there's a period of time between Off the Wall and Thriller where he was changing.
Yeah.
Uh, and he's still a dynamic, really truly one of the
Mm.
most dynamic humans you could possibly
Oh,
ever meet.
yeah.
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
he was wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Exploding
anyways,
talent.
he says, "Hi, I'm Joe," and he didn't even get my name out. She goes, "No, you're not. No, you're Michael Jackson." Well, she buys the
Did she
magazine we turned
scream?
in book.
You're Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Well, the problem with that is I was with him on probably three instances where somebody recognized him, and one was a sprint. We were He loved the Beatles. We went to what was that? What was the theater on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, the Lorena or something like that. Anyways, we went and
I'm not
saw I
sure.
think the Yellow Submarine or something like that
Uh,
late at night.
yeah.
When nobody else would be there except
Right.
for those weird odd
Nobody.
people. And I
Weird dudes.
remember him going, "We got to go," because
Oh,
somebody had viewed him, had looked over the shoulder and saw
recognized him.
Michael, and man, yeah, it was like, "Let's go." And we literally they followed us out and got in the lot in the car. It was
Yeah.
exciting.
And then you had to stunt drive away, probably.
No,
No.
no,
Oh, that's cool,
don't want to
man.
run over
Oh,
people.
like that's a scene from a movie, man. You got to make a movie of your
Yeah,
life, bro.
yeah,
You got so many
those,
amazing experiences.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lucky, like I say, I'm so yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to this, do you want to go back to this religion thing?
So yeah, so going back to Jehovah's Witness, yeah,
Yeah, so living this incredible dichotomy,
this dual life. Yeah.
uh, it's where I would think things started getting really wonky with me was in Thailand, where I was starting to proselytize to an assistant
Mm.
that that we had.
Just a question.
What's
Were
that?
Just a quick question,
Yeah.
personal question. Um, were you a strong believer, or were you full of doubts?
Well,
Or
I mean, honestly, not to paint myself a pretty picture, because I would say that I was a double life liver.
hmm,
Uh, that I definitely was able to wear a mask
hmm,
and portray this happy-go-lucky noon character. Meanwhile, I was dying inside,
hmm,
and there's so many nights, days. While I'm doing Charmed, I live, maybe 10-minute drive from my giant house in Bell Canyon,
yeah,
super, horse estates,
yeah,
down to, my job 10 minutes down the road is perfect. And
yeah,
it sure seems like that. Well, and I have a beautiful family and all that. But man, if there wasn't a day that went by that I was just beating my steering wheel, regardless of how good a day I had on set
yeah,
or not, beating my steering wheel going, you know, I, I don't know where the desperation was or
hmm.
what. I just felt like a locked in, uh,
Well, I mean, it's so ironic that you're able to be in this career that you love
yeah,
and you enjoy, and many people would want to be in those shoes, and you got this awesome career, but you can't enjoy it. It's kind of sounds like,
yeah.
yeah,
And I knew all along that I was really living a lie.
mm,
Uh, I picked up some circuit overseers. The circuit overseer is somebody that's pretty high up in the church. I'll just are they are valued as important.
okay,
They travel from congregation to congregation, visiting every congregation every 6 months or something
kind
like
of
that.
make
But
sure everybody's like
but I
following the
remember
rules.
they asked me what I did for a living, and when I said stuntman, I thought that this circuit overseer's wife was literally going to have a heart attack in the car. The
Really?
way she yelped, I I mean,
Wow.
how can you even
Yeah.
at that point,
Mm,
that's what I do. This is how I make a living. This is all I know. I've done it since I was 4.
yeah.
Uh, and so there was always an inner battle. The inner battle is was profound.
Yeah.
And yet, your life goes on. You're really trying to hold on to it, but at
Hmm.
some point, it had a breaking point. And
Sure.
whether on the outside it looks like I'm a cheat, or you know I cheated my wife, I cheated my family, I cheated my friends, all that.
Mm,
uh, I'm very happy that things actually transpired the way they did,
mm,
and because at the point I'm at right now has come a such a bigger piece of paradise, you could say,
yeah.
living it at this moment. And I mean, I can't even say much happier in the skin, because it's beyond that. I'm just, I am effervescent, I
Mm,
would say.
yeah.
I'm loving it all,
Mm,
honestly. And it all comes
that's
from the
awesome.
perspective of where I'm at.
Yeah.
And there
And
are a lot of components uh, that had to come
kind
into
of
play
fall into place.
uh, for this to happen.
Mm.
And so,
So it sounds like you're having a pretty big struggle internally, anyways, and then you go to Thailand, and it's a completely different world over there, and mindset and everything, and you start talking to this guy who's a Buddhist,
yeah,
and you're trying to convince him to become a Jehovah's Witness,
yeah. I
or
mean, ultimately, yeah, that would have been
that's
that would
that's
it
the
be in the
yeah
play. But
the
and
goal.
why I'm doing that, honestly, I don't know, because at that point, my faith was not very ironclad.
Mm,
I'll say. Um, I was already having my own personal. Well, I was battling literally every day,
mm,
but I was going down different roads of possibilities, and none of them uh, really painted a great picture. The outcome was always going to be a painful one, and regardless. And
Yeah.
but man, the the path certainly. I mean, in retrospect, I can say absolutely. I was led to this spot. There's no way it's not going to be play out exactly as it did. It's impossible to say, anyways, because here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I remember talking to this guy, and what he was saying to me was, in terms of Buddhism, this assistant in Thailand,
Yeah.
he I just had never heard those words. I'd never heard what a Buddhist thought is, and uh, I
What's an
really,
example? Can you think of an example of that?
well, in this case, I think he was talking about reincarnation, honestly.
Okay.
And I had never even given, all I knew was a given set of words to say to counteract this whole thing. I never really dug into
Right.
any thoughts
In a
like
lot
that.
of those religions, there's this like, okay, this is your pat answers that you're taught to kind
Yeah.
of retort.
And
Yeah.
life after death and coming back is that, and the sincerity with which he was saying it was undeniable.
Hmm.
And he it felt like he was just a lot more comfortable saying what he was
Believed.
what he believed than I certainly was.
Mm.
Even though I had the rhetoric, I had umpteen books to pull from,
Right. Yeah.
including
Yeah.
a Bible that you, is very tailored to express Jehovah's Witnesses beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like a
But
different
you don't get
version.
to do that until you're on the outside looking in, and at
Yeah.
that point,
Well, I'll just go my 2 cents. I remember when I was in Japan, some Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door when I
mhm,
was living over there, and they super nice, polite people, of course, but I had I came up very Baptist and Christian, so I just happened to have some pamphlets on Baptist, what the Baptist or Christianity believes,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they were in Japanese. And so I go, oh, you're gonna give that to me? Okay, arigato, arigato. And I said, here, and I tried to give them something, and you would have thought I was trying to give them a porno magazine.
yeah, yeah. Even worse, you were
It
giving
was
them the
like,
hand of
oh
the
no, no,
devil.
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
you were giving
no.
them the hand of Satan. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's
So you
I.
can't even see another perspective.
It's
It's
impossible.
impossible.
It's impossible until it's not, and then I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Again, I appreciate that time.
Right.
It was
Hmm.
it was lovely. So, um, as as things are changing in my life, I will say I had a very hard left turn in 2007 when I'm second time back in Thailand in Rambo,
Mm. Mm.
and yeah, it was time for change, obviously,
Hmm.
because I was on a path that
You just couldn't
I could not
maintain
stop from,
anymore. Yeah.
and I, you know, the pain that I knew it would incur was pretty
That's
devastating.
got to be the hardest part, like, because it's not just you, it's your dad, your family, your friends,
It's
your
everything,
your
yeah,
whole
and
community. Yeah.
their 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 tenet, I will say, is when somebody walks away from this church or shows a non-repentant attitude towards a wrongdoing,
Yeah.
that you are going to be ostracized. You're going to be, and not even, you're going to be cut off. You're going to be lopped off like
Right.
a bad fruit.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that goes as far as your family is going to cut you off. Well, that was literally the day I got announced as this fellowship was the last time I spoke with my father
Mm.
to all the way till he died. Didn't even get to say goodbye. It was during COVID anyways.
My God.
However, but, you know, uh, that is a fact that I knew was going to be coming into play. And that was, there was a period there, Duke, when it seemed to ramp up. So prior to leaving the church, I was banging my steering wheel going, I fucking hate life. I fucking hate life. Why am, you know, you know, that already stemmed from a lot of guilt and fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
Indoctrinated into you.
Yeah.
And then you go a little further down the line, and now you are breaking away from this, and it's even worse. The guilt and the fear for your actions that take place,
Right.
that you feel so a part of, like you are just driving this ship, and it is I just say, it was so painful.
Yeah.
There were umpteen days when I
Well, I
really
mean,
wanted to off myself. There was no reason to live further. I ruined so many lives, and I felt the guilt and pressure, and and the
right.
fear of talk about FOMO. I mean, that is you were constantly barraged with, this end of this world is coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna keep, and I've heard that since I'm a
Child
child.
is just
Every
pounded into you.
every
Yeah.
world event spells a new,
Yep. The end of the
a
world.
new reason that God's going to intervene, and Armageddon's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come and wipe out all these evil people. And
Mm,
well, there I am. I'm one of those evil people. Now
right.
I'm super evil. Who the heck knows what's going to happen?
Right. Because you've turned off. You've turned your back on this, and oh man, I can imagine the fear and guilt that must have just been
Yeah. And
pounding you. Yeah.
the most damning person that is you're on the chopping block. You have put yourself on the chopping block, and
Yeah.
you're beating yourself to a pulp
Yeah.
over this experience.
Right.
And well, while that's happening, and I was really at my wit's end, totally suicidal feeling. I mean, it crossed my mind every day
Wow.
for
Jeez, man.
several months.
Jeez.
And then a friend of mine that had been disfellowshipped just prior to me, had called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you come over for a visit? I want to introduce you to something."
Mm.
And so I go to my friend Aaron's house, and he was in the same boat.
Mm.
There's all of the people, your support group is gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Right.
Friends that you held dear, family that you held dear.
Wow.
It is an alienation that is it's thorough.
Yeah.
I'll just say thorough.
Not to
And
mention that you're splitting up with your wife and all that
and that's going off
at
as
the
well.
same time.
I'm getting a divorce. I've fallen in love with Thailand and this woman,
Hmm.
and which doesn't last very long, but it definitely opened the door for me to exit something that I was ready to exit.
Exit. Yeah.
So
So you go over to this friend's house who was
so Aaron invites me over, and he introduces me to psilocybin mushrooms and golden teacher,
mm,
and he gives me what he considered a hero's dose. It was
wow.
5 grams of
Right off the
so
bat, huh?
right off the bat. And I had, up to this point, Duke, so raised as a Jehovah's Witness, I never tried a drug.
Uh-huh.
I
Oh
had
yeah.
never tried cocaine to this day. I've never tried any what would you call them, hard
Oh,
drugs,
like heroin or meth or
heroin. I have not done
speed
that.
or yeah.
But to this point, I've done a lion's share of hallucinogenics, entheogenic plants that broaden the spectrum
Yeah.
of understanding, I will say.
Well, I think
But
it's a
anyways,
shame that they're
Aaron,
lumped together.
what's that?
I think it's a shame that they're just lumped together with these other drugs.
Yeah,
I just yeah.
yeah. Well, that
That's a whole other
it's all
thing.
part of the movie. I mean, at some
Yeah.
point, you know, will their freedom be we don't know yet, but
Right.
anyways, it's a play in action. So
Mm.
it's all still, the wheels are still rolling.
Yeah.
It
Yes,
may
they are.
happen. Don't worry about it. But so I experienced this plant,
Mm.
this fungi,
This
and
teacher.
sat there in his house for, I don't know, maybe 10 hours. And
Wow.
the journey that I took on that. Oh, really quick, going back. So the only thing that I'd ever tried, I'd never even tried marijuana up to this point.
Mm. Wow.
Not a puff. I had plenty to drink because, Jesus changed to water
Water
into
to wine.
wine. So, if one glass is good for the
Yeah.
belly or the
Yeah.
heart,
Well, at
imagine what
least
a
you
whole
guys could
bottle
drink.
is.
At least
What's
you
that?
guys could drink. Us Baptists couldn't even drink.
Oh, dang. Oh, that's too stifling. No, I have a Baptist. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. Remind me of
All right.
my Baptist experiences. But so I have this mushroom. It is life changing, earth shaking,
Mm.
absolute. Ah, I get to
I
meet
can't.
in this journey. I
I
meet
can't
Jesus.
imagine,
I
dude.
meet Baphomet, who represented the Satan in this experience. I meet the
Wow.
Buddha. I meet Hitler. I meet Jehovah,
Wow.
not in face, but when I called this entity above me Jehovah,
Uh huh.
the retort was, "Don't call me that." Yeah, that was
Okay.
awesome.
Okay.
But in addition to these characters in this experience that I
Yeah.
had that was extremely real, I also started to learn a lot more about the meaning
So,
of life.
were
And so,
you very liberated after that?
oh,
Was it just like,
in between 8 to 10 hours,
yeah,
I was completely alleviated
wow,
of fear and guilt,
that's
religious fear
crazy.
and guilt, gone,
Wow.
gone in 8 hours, done, never to return,
Hmm.
impossible,
Huh.
irreversible. And just because of what you see and know on a much deeper level of yourself,
Hmm.
changed everything.
Hmm.
It changed everything. And so of course now my I have the palate for this. I really want to keep investigating the meaning of life, and for uh, probably between 2009 and 2014, I went down a lot of roads.
Hmm.
I took quite a bit of LSD and mushrooms, grew mushrooms, brewed my own ayahuasca,
You brewed your own
yeah,
ayahuasca?
smoked DMT up the wazoo, did changa, salvia divinorum, you name it.
Yeah.
Got into other mushrooms, Amanita
But
muscaria,
but were any of the trips is
profound.
profound as that first
Oh, I
one,
would
or
say there was many,
was there?
many that were profound. I never had that same experience,
Hmm. Yeah.
where love broke down the barrier. It was a crazy thing when I first started to trip on this first psilocybin journey. The very first thing that taunted me was what the perfect iteration of Satan, which was the Baphomet. I don't know
Hmm.
if you're familiar with it,
You
but
have very yeah, I
it
know what
has
you're
the
talking about. The
pentagram in its
goat and
face.
the
It's a
pentagram and
yeah,
just
it's scary as hell. Well,
yeah.
that thing is not gnashing its teeth at me, and to me,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna die.
gosh. Wow.
And the words that came out of my mouth was "I love you."
Hmm.
And in that, the funny thing is you're quite conscious about what you wanted to express, and that was what I expressed.
Wow.
And it was all like I was taken in this magical mystery ride up
Hmm.
into some other celestial realm, and this Baphomet turns right into Jesus. I mean, literally Jesus, and now
Hmm.
they're standing side by side like best brothers. and
Wow.
and then this journey, across the clouds of heaven,
Uh-huh.
really, where I saw, everybody had a spirit guide, and I asked a lot of questions
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
journey about my family that I had recently been
And
separated from.
it's interesting because I mean I have not experienced mushrooms yet myself,
Mm.
but I've heard that there's such a variation in kinds of trips and stuff that you have. But to have a trip where a spiritual being actually talks to you and has a conversation is rare. I've heard, right? Isn't it?
I can't say that. I've had countless trips
Really?
with spiritual entities. Oh yeah,
Huh?
yeah, and with multiple different modalities too. I mean, from salvia, which is this drug. I've probably taken it 30 times, which I don't recommend.
You don't recommend?
Because it's I call it the two steps forward, one step back plant. Oh man, whew,
That's the
it'd
one
throw
that
you
just
for a
like
loop.
knocks you like ugh,
But the funny thing is, I
outright.
met Jesus on I think it was either my first or second trip on that, and I
Oh,
was in search for him again.
hmm.
And I don't think I can't remember ever reconnecting the way I did this trip that I had. And ooh, but I can't re remember any of the questions that I had asked that, but
Hmm.
at the time they were heartfelt and questions
Questions
that
that you had been struggling with for a long time, I'm
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
And I never did it in a party atmosphere, always in a very shamanic,
yeah, yeah.
meditative
I think that
setting.
makes a big difference in what your intention is and what your setting is at, as to
Definitely.
what kind of experience you're going to have. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
And well, I mean, I can't call myself a, a proponent for uh, this. I can certainly say, in my instance, it was
it sounds like it's what you needed. It sounds
oh,
like
it was
it's one of
amazing.
the only things that might have been able to break your mind free a little
Yeah,
bit,
and I was always diving in with I want to know more. I want to know more. What
Right.
makes this tick? What you
Yeah.
know? Why am I here? And
Yeah.
is this a
It
movie?
just, I
It
go back
started.
to so when you saw this uh, Satan looking character coming at you
Mm.
and you said, I love you, like, that's like not the natural response that
No,
somebody
and the
would.
effect was it almost stopped. It's like it had to pause because it was coming at me.
Right.
It was headlong coming at me
Yeah. Yeah.
with a very bearing its fangs, I'll say.
Huh.
And that was it. And when it was probably
So it's like when you,
within 10 feet of me in my consciousness,
yeah.
I that's when I blurted out those words. And they were
So you basically, I mean, kind of conquered evil with love,
you could
I
say that.
guess,
I
right?
mean,
I mean,
you could say
basically.
that. Yeah, yes, that's how it pans out. Yes, that way.
Yeah.
Uh, but the effect was one of those dizzying. Uh, uh, who did the
Cleanse.
dolly in
Oh, yeah, the shot where the dolly in and they zoom out.
zoom out is
What's that called?
yeah, but who?
They did it in Jaws.
Oh, but who is the famous guy that
And oh, Alfred Hitchcock.
yeah, hold on.
Is that who you're thinking of?
Yeah,
Alfred
yeah.
Hitchcock.
So it's very much a Alfred Hitchcock moment where you're pushing in and dolling out or dolling
Mm,
out, pushing in, where I was traveling up with it, but it was maintaining this distance
mm,
until it was obviously we came to some kind of aperture and boom, and there's the Jesus metamorphosis.
mm.
And
Wow.
yeah, that one uh, was profound and truly set me
Mm.
on a path that
And so the second time you said that you met Jesus was on a mushroom trip too, but you don't remember exactly what you
oh
talked
no,
about.
I think you were talking about the Salvia Divinorum where I had that the
Oh,
second
that was a
time.
salvia
Yeah.
trip. Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
that Salvia came into my life long after I had already been experimenting with a lot of
Hmm.
mushrooms and LSD and whatever else really. I sat 14 hours with the Eastern Ute Indians in Cortez, Colorado,
Really?
in a giant teepee of 30 Ute Indians with this giant
Wow.
blazing fire. It was snowing outside,
This was a sweat
and
lodge?
it was no, it
No.
was called Church Day.
Huh.
And in church, and they said that we were the first two Westerners, my wife and I, uh, Pan and I, end up driving right up to the elder and said, we were looking for a sweat lodge, funny enough, but
Yeah.
uh, said, we asked what they had going on. They
Hmm.
said it, church day, and we said it. We are really truly in the search of the meaning of life. And would you mind us sitting in on it? And he said, and so he was an elder.
Mm.
We pulled up right, of all the hundreds of congregants, there were an elder there.
Wow.
And so we have he lets us in. So we're sitting in this teepee for, I'd say, 14 hours. It was 6 p.m. I think till 8 a.m.
Mm.
And
Wow, that's a long church.
we had so much peyote that
Oh, it's a
yeah. So
peyote.
they grind it in
Mm.
a what do you call it, a mortar
Mortar.
and mortar and pestle,
Yeah.
and then they serve it as a drink, where you have a big scoop of it
Yeah.
and have it. Well, that thing goes around all night long as you're chanting on the drum, and they were speaking native language, so I
Mm.
couldn't understand it, but they actually let us even do a chant. We asked, and they have very specific rules once you're in that tent,
Mm.
that you have to exit a certain way.
Right.
Pan, the very first product thing that we did was smoke this giant. You had to roll your own fresh tobacco, so they handed you a leaf. They
Hmm.
handed you black tobacco, Indian tobacco, which is well potent.
I bet.
And not being a smoker of any sort, the very first puff, I'm already green, and Pan
Yeah.
just rips down her entire giant stogie,
Because she was a
throws
smoker.
up all,
Yeah.
and these are 40 people we don't know, true Indians,
Yeah.
Indians bad, right? Native American,
Native Americans. Yeah.
and they were lovely. We actually stayed in contact with them,
Mm.
but the experience of having peyote all night long was
So you
another one
drink
of those.
more than one dose of peyote?
It's
Does
if
that
I
make you
had
sick like ayahuasca, or does it
Well,
affect the
it
same?
tastes not like ayahuasca. It was a lot more viscous,
What's that
and
like?
like snotty.
Snotty?
Yeah,
Okay.
like
Slimy?
tomato, like the
Slimy?
insides of a tomato. It had
Oh,
that goo
yummy.
feeling to it, so already it's not that palatable.
Hmm.
And nonetheless, you take your hit,
Hmm.
and then the I guess it's one of the considered the medicine man, or the right hand man of the elder, would come around with the drum and dum, 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 dum,
Hmm.
dum. All while you're tripping on peyote, which is just mind-boggling. And then listening to all these wonderful uh, expressions that these natives were giving, and they were actually asking for forgiveness amongst their brothers for,
Were they speaking in English? Could you
no,
understand?
a lot of it was being held in a
Oh,
little back and forth, actually.
okay.
So half English, half native,
Okay.
and I can't remember what that
We say
that
they were
was.
Utes.
It was the Utes, yeah.
Ute. I think their language is Ute language.
Oh,
I think. I think.
makes sense. But I think because I've been up on the Navajo and the Hopi
Oh,
reservations and
yeah.
stayed actually quite a bit of time there, and I gathered that they all have a universal language that they kind
That
of
they can
can,
at least communicate
yeah,
between each other with.
yeah, tribe to
Right.
tribe. I
Yeah.
believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I don't know that either. Huh. Interesting. It sounds a little bit like I did. I did ayahuasca a couple of years ago. Um, and it was funny how you were talking about how, it was time and it found you in a way. And I had, I had been struggling with stuff, not unlike you actually, but um, you had given me like a piece of mushroom chocolate, and I was afraid to take it for a long time, so I didn't take it, and so I decided I was going to take it, and I told Iami, I'm going to try it because I thought it was a strong dose, but I actually found out later it wasn't nothing actually.
Microdose,
But
breaking it easy.
I but I thought it was going to be like this profound experience,
Mm.
and I was a little bit afraid to do it, and so uh, I finally said, okay, I'm going to go for it, and then she's like, okay, and then like right after that, a video pops up on my YouTube feed about ayahuasca and going to the jungles of Peru. I forget the name of that movie, but It had that famous girl from the Fast and Furious movies, uh,
Yeah,
the
shucks.
Latino girl. Her name escapes me, but she was like the main person. It was like this whole movie about her going down there and doing it and how great it
Oh,
was. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's what I should do is ayahuasca. But I'm like, I don't want to go all the way to Peru. That's a huge commitment. And the next day after I watched that video, I get a call from a friend of mine who's hosting an ayahuasca ceremony 5 minutes from my house. The
Ye-
day after I think I need to do that.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah,
It's so crazy, man,
yeah.
how it works. Yeah.
It's
And I
yeah,
hadn't talked to this guy in over a year. Like he
mhm,
called out of the blue,
yeah.
you know,
That's just the magic of this movie.
of
It
this.
really is
Yeah.
truly wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 So, so the plants helped you a lot on your journey.
yeah.
Uh, it
They
sounds like.
really
And
pulled
and what
the.
about any spiritual gurus or anything like that?
Well, I think the plants became that,
Yeah.
but all the while that's happening, I'm starting to look into, man, I opened, so with the plants, I will say comes books.
Mm.
And I wanted to familiarize myself with uh, everything that I could never do before. And so I gravitated towards Buddhism. I gravitated towards Hinduism, some of the spiritual teachers that I kind of
What
locked in
attracted
with.
you to that? What attracted you to those faiths, you think?
Um, well, the Buddhism was most accessible. Pan was Chinese, and we had also started to be befriended by a friend of her father's, which was a master. That's what we actually called a master. We lived with this very magical man for a number of months.
Mm.
And when
He
I
was
say
a
magic,
Buddhist. Was he a
uh,
Buddhist or?
I would say that he was probably the most fluent person in Buddhism, Taoism,
Mm.
Vedantaism, if there's such a thing. His knowledge of, I, I, he was 94 years old when I met him. I
Mm.
don't know if he's still alive or not. I've lost contact with him, but I did see him 5 years ago.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And so he would have been 104, still moving like a
Wow.
cat.
What?
Hard to explain the things, the magic I saw. So this is a whole nother. This is a side story that I don't even know if I can express it
Yeah.
because it's
But
like
he was
too
in.
unbelievable.
He was influential in your
Yeah. So
growth, I
so
guess you
living
could
with this
say.
guy, I must have together we went to umpteen temples. He would explain the history of all kinds of things.
Mm.
So got really into Buddhism and Hinduism. I fell in love with as I started to travel into Nepal and India.
Hmm.
All of this is done on this, in the search of the meaning of life. I mean, what better place than to
Were you
end up?
still working in the business a lot at that time, or
No. So
no?
2012, December 19th, 2012 was my last day on a set until jump forward, I think 3.5 years.
Mm.
But during that time, Pan and I traveled extensively, ended up in India, ended up, like you said, in Nalanda, India, circumambulating
Oh,
the Bodhi
the
tree.
Buddhist the Bogi tree. Yeah.
Yeah, went and lived in ashrams, did
Mm.
silent meditations for days on end, did you
Wow.
know this is in 2014, later part of
Okay.
2014 into 15 when this is happening.
You
And
guys were you guys were searching hard.
yeah,
You
oh
were
yeah, I mean
on the search.
it was game on. It's
Yeah.
so funny though. In retrospect, I feel Pan kind of always knew what the score was, and I was getting,
Oh yeah.
I had to
You
open
think
these doors myself to,
you think she already kind of knew what was
she
going on?
always seemed wise beyond years,
Yeah.
but this is my story, and she plays truly the most pivotal role
Yeah. Yeah.
in it, and
She was
a lovely
amazing.
person that loved everything and
She was.
everybody. And I've never seen anybody like her with animals. I've watched bears walk
Yeah.
right next to her. I've
Really?
watched her hand feed wild coyotes.
Huh. Wow.
I've watched foxes lead her to
I could see
dens.
that. She just had
She's
that
so
aura
magical.
about her, you
Yeah,
know. She had this
Pan was
frequency that was just put
yeah,
people and animals at ease, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was very magical. And so now I get to meet her magical, like crazy fun uh people in her life in China.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we take this journey is that I think my last movie was Ride Along. I
Hmm.
had been here in Atlanta, Georgia for I've been living up in a nudist resort in northern Georgia, Serendipity up in Cleveland, Georgia for a couple months
Wow.
between films, and this is
Dang.
where we were doing mushrooms and hanging out with the nudies. And they're lovely people too, just awesome people. Love
Man, you
them.
talk about going from one extreme to the other,
Yeah,
huh?
oh,
Whew.
we just wanted to experience whatever it was
Yeah.
that's going to let us drop our egos, let us really see ourselves as, you know, from the inside,
Mm.
honestly.
Right.
And then so did that. Chad is was directing second unit on Hunger Games. I think Catching Fire. I don't know which one, but anyways, he calls and says, "Hey, you want to come down to Atlanta and check out?" I'm like, he said at first, he says, where are you? It's like, Georgia. He goes, perfect. Come down to Atlanta and da 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 da. Anyway, so next thing you know, we had
You're
been
in
living in
Georgia? What are you
our
doing? Where are they?
motorhome.
What's that?
We'd been living in either our motorhome or a tent for this most of this time.
Wow.
And so at this point, we're in the motorhome. We drive back down to Atlanta, which was 2 hours. I got in a few trucks, drove them around.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Prior to that, I did the movie Escape Plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually where I get to meet a few really good dudes. Greg Rementer
Oh,
had
yeah.
him doubling Jim
On here.
Caviezel. Who else? Ali Ramey and a couple other guys. I had doubling Sly. But nonetheless, we were there, finished that movie.
Hmm.
We're heading towards this thing called the Rainbow Gathering. You'll have to look that one up because it's hippies in the
Oh,
woods.
I mean, I know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
I
were heading
mean,
that way. We break down. We ended up at this nudist place.
yeah.
Did that for a couple months. Became friends and family with all the people that lived there. And
How
it's
many people live in a nudist resort?
I think of the people we met, there were probably a quorum of 20 real locals that were always down at by the pool.
Uh-huh.
I would say I probably met 35 people there.
Is it like a campground or do
Yeah,
they
it's
have
trail. It's
houses?
a you think of trailer park behind closed gates.
Okay.
Uh, some are hovels and some like our rig was a pretty nice Cayman Monaco 40-foot motorhome.
Hmm.
And so we drive down to Atlanta to do Hunger Games. Chad asked me to come and drive a couple trucks to see what they were, what they were capable of.
Yeah.
And it was on that for a couple of weeks. And Michael Huggins and Sam Hargrave were coordinating it for Chad. And we're there a few weeks, and the producer uh, from Escape Plan in New Orleans calls me up. So it's only been 2.5 months since I've
Yeah.
spoken with this guy.
Yeah.
And he says, "Where are you?" I said, "Atlanta." He goes, "Perfect." He goes, "We need you to come and coordinate the show." And I said, "Oh, it's Escape Plan." Well, Larnell Stovall was the listed stunt coordinator, but I don't think he had enough credits at that point yet to
Oh, okay.
get the film bonded. And
Mm.
so there I was. We worked together really good. Anyways, we're 8711
Yeah.
brothers,
Yeah.
and uh, so I do that movie, and then we go on our walkabout, Pan and I. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's how this whole time in Georgia actually starts for me.
Really?
Yeah,
At a nudist colony.
at a nudist colony called
When you
Serendipity,
serendipity.
northern Georgia, Cleveland, Georgia. We lived it. We loved it. It was fun.
I guess I'm imagine still there, probably.
Yeah, they
Right?
actually filmed a movie. Oh, I have the name at the tip of my tongue there. And they were all proud of it. Oh, you work in the movies. Yeah, we were in a movie. Oh, it's gonna come to me. I'll think of it and
That's funny.
we'll
Like,
put a link in or something.
okay, yeah. So you go on the walkabout. What's that about? Is that you
Yeah, so the
guys just
walkabout
drive around the
is,
country, or?
yeah, at first it takes us to the West Coast. Now this is during the 2012, world's coming to an end kind of mindset.
Yep, like it's been
Uh,
around 2000,
mhm.
2012
We've
right
been living with
now.
this Chinese master who is,
Yeah.
even though he lives in obscurity, for some reason is up on every world detail to the T.
Interesting.
And
Huh.
anyways, so we made it all the way to the West Coast, and he called us 12, 12, 12, and says, "Hey, come to China.
Hmm. Wow.
Come to China. It's time." And what it's time for? Well, gonna have
12,
to leave
12,
that one
12.
for
Okay.
another one. But anyways, we ended up in China, and then our from that point we really started.
Was he basically saying the world's coming to an end, so you need to come over here immediately, or
Uh, in different words.
in
Yeah,
different
but
words?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna be vague about that only because that opens a whole nother can of worms. But
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about that on another
Yeah. Well,
topic, another
we're gonna have
day, another
many
some
episodes. I can feel it with you. Yeah.
perhaps yes. I don't mind. I mean,
Good.
yeah.
Good. Yeah. Um. So you go out there. You go back to China, and then you. How long were you there?
On that trip, we were there 3 months. We probably had already stayed with this guy a total of 9 months face to face, where we interacted with him,
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis. In the course of from 2009 when I meet Pan
Mm-hmm.
and she brings me to China to meet her family and etc.
Right.
Uh, through 2013 and kind of what his ideals at the time were not exactly in line with what our ideals were. So we parted ways with this guy and then went out, struck out to find our own
Mm.
understanding of things.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up in India,
Mm.
where there was more Buddhism. There was Jainism.
Mm.
We
Jainism, is
we
that the one where they wear white, or am I thinking
Yeah,
something?
the Jains are yes. You know what? You don't want to call them they're an extreme. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
they will not walk at night for fear of stepping on an insect. So
Oh, okay.
life to them
Very,
is
very
precious. Their
precious.
meals
Yeah.
are extremely strict.
Mm.
Vegetarian,
Mm.
including I want to say no root plants. Uh,
Why is that?
I I can't remember the
Mm.
reasoning. The mind is only allowed to store so much
So much
information.
information.
I took in a lot at that time,
Yeah,
but I've
yeah.
also, through the course of
Filtered
time
it
now,
out.
I've
Yeah,
had to stick it into the back archives. They're there for sure, but
yeah.
at some point, yeah, right now, I
So
don't want to dig
so
too
you
hard to
spend
get
time
back there.
with them a little bit in
Yeah, so
Hinduism and.
yeah, we sat with six,
Mm.
and we handed out food with the six. And in India, that's quite an experience. There'll be
But they're all kind of a branch of Hinduism, right?
no,
They're
no,
completely
actually,
different.
yeah,
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
yeah, very different.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then you have the Muslims, which is a whole nother.
Is there many of those in India?
What's that?
Are there many of those in India?
Uh, there are. Oh yeah,
Is there? Oh.
yeah. Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Jain.
They all get
Uh,
along okay.
what's that?
Do they all get along
Yeah,
pretty good?
Buddhist. Much better than they would in America. No, I can't say that. That's not necessarily true. But there's a commonality between, I think, India. India just is. When I go there, and I've been there a few times now, and I've spent probably a year's time in India.
Hmm.
It's a planet. It is so their morals, their values, their understanding of life is it's so you could almost call it contradictory to our in the
Mm,
United States.
yeah. Yeah.
Their way of life, their caste system is so it sometimes it would just boggle me that you have all these different levels
Mm,
of uh, of
society, kind of, right?
yeah,
It's
thank you, of
yeah.
society. You know, you have Brahmins and etc., and then
Hmm.
you have people that know for a fact that that's what they're born into. I'm going to live this life as good as I can.
Mm.
So they are expert. They
They don't
beggars.
aspire to be in this level. They
Yeah,
like,
it's
this is my
so
level. I'm just gonna
different, and,
own
and
it.
that's their life. That's
Mm.
that's how they understand that this incarnation is coming to them. And I, I
There's
mean,
got
at
to be a
least
lot
from
of
my
peace in that.
perspective, it was mind-boggling. It
Yeah.
was so much more harmonious in
Right.
its own
In a way.
chaotic way
Yeah.
that I I would put my hand up instantly to go back to India. I love
Mm.
India. I think the people are wow. It's a planet, and it's a good
Yeah.
one.
Miami's been bugging me to go there. She wants to go there really bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a. I'll
I've
give
heard
you.
so
I'll
many
give you a list
good
of
and
places.
bad
I
things.
trained all over that country, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to get together and you can give us some places to
yeah,
go. But um, so in those travels, you're kind of taking a little bit of everything. It sounds like,
yeah,
sort
and
of,
yeah,
and
truly, truly that. I mean,
piecing together something that.
yeah. In the end, you start. I something starts to evolve in my psyche that
Hmm.
says, "Oh my God, there's value in every." Wait a second. As I and then as I start going deeper into the down the rabbit hole, that goes from hold on, there's beauty in all of this to
Hmm.
it's all coming from the same source, from the same mind, from the
Hmm.
same consciousness. How
Hmm.
could any of it be wrong? But in the
Right.
movie, you need the bad guy,
Right.
and you need the good guy. This
Yeah.
world is this dream, I call it that, is the dream of duality,
Hmm.
and one cannot survive without the other. It nullifies
Right.
the fact.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we work in the movie business. That's your whole life, what you come up with. And now to kind of make that like a microcosm of the macrocosm, and be able to compare those two worlds of, movie and reality. And reality is in a way, it's a big movie. You've got, like you said, your protagonist, your antagonist, you got your villains, your good guys, you got your story arcs, and you got your climax, and your all of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and seeing it that way, it allows for all possibilities.
Mm.
When you realize that, oh my God, this is a big feature that I am at being that I'm getting to experience through the eyes of this character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's you start to feel like, oh my God, anything could happen. Monkeys could fly out of somebody's butt right now, and I really wouldn't be surprised. Bigfoot could crawl out of
The way this
the
year's
forest.
been going,
What's that?
I said the way this last year's been going, anything doesn't surprise me, man.
Yeah,
There's some crazy stuff going
there's
down.
some. It's awesome. I mean, personally, I am excited for every. Waking up every day is going to be an exciting
The
adventure
headlines are
because
like I
it's
don't know
getting more
what,
crazy.
man.
It's more fun. It's
Yeah.
much more of an adventure right now. And I think seeing things that way have has transformed
Right.
my experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes some of the fear out of it, because I mean, there's a lot of people excited right now, but there's a lot of people afraid right now. You know, there's a lot of fear that is going around, and I think change brings fear because it's the unknown. And there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that we kind of thought were real foundational, kind of changing and shifting. And yeah, some it can be scary or it can be exciting.
Hmm.
Depends on how you look at it.
How's it to you?
To me,
Yeah.
oh, that's a good question. A little bit
At
of
this
both.
moment.
A little bit of both. I think you know, like I came up very similar to you, in the aspect of where they're telling you that we're in the end days, the end times. You know, I don't know if Jehovah's Witnesses have the rapture or not, but the
They
rapture
have their
was
own style,
was a
their
big
own
thing, and
wording for that.
yeah, and the tribulation and stuff like that, and it's ever since I was a kid, uh, it was just always there in the background, and I mean I can remember, my dad's a pastor. He was a pastor, and he would get people coming up in his church wanting to like argue with him all the time and tell him, you know, Jesus is coming back next year, and this is this and this and this and this is why. And my dad would always go back to the verse, well, no man can know the day or hour, so that's pretty clear,
Yeah.
it's going to happen when it
The
happens.
one that always got me was the light. The light is getting brighter.
The
Like
light,
you're starting to see things clearer.
yeah.
It didn't happen that time, but we're starting to see things clearer. The light is
Right,
getting
right, yeah.
brighter. Yeah, it's
The
gonna just
light's
keep getting
getting
brighter.
clearer.
Keep going, bright, bright, bright.
We were way off, but now we really know.
Yeah, it's
Next
very
one,
bright.
next one we're going to be right.
So bright.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of fear. I mean, and kind of a little bit like sometimes I didn't expect to get to this age that I'm at right now. And a lot of times I didn't plan very well because I really didn't think there was going to be a future. And so it affected my life in that way. And I never, I know, there's a lot of Christians out there and they talk about the tribulation and all this, the rapture and end times, and they get excited. I was never really excited.
Mhm. I
When
think
I
that was my thing too.
I read about all the terrible things that were going to happen, I'm like,
Mhm. Yeah, I never got that excited about this.
yeah, yeah, and so I finally got to a point where I just kind of was like, okay, yeah, this quack is going to say 2012, now it's 2015,
Yeah.
2000,
Yeah.
Y2K,
75, 81, 85,
yeah,
89.
I just kind
I
of
got
quit
all those
listening
things
to
too.
it too much,
Yeah.
but now now I'm back to where I'm like, I'm seeing so many crazy things happening now, you know, and it's not just like prophecy stuff. It's like AI. It's like quantum chips. It's like uh, you know seeing things in the skies and weather changes
Mm.
and stuff like that. So then another part of me kind of scratches my head and go, well, I don't know. I mean, like you said, the movie is playing. We don't know how it ends. So
This conscious
it's just we just got to go
expression.
with it.
I mean, so in my searches, I something became very evident to me is that there's one subjective viewpoint here.
Hmm.
I mean, if you go down the rabbit hole far enough, you end up with one
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing that is objectifying this whole charade
Hmm.
and adding all kinds of fun details to playground Earth
Right.
or this wonderful set called Earth that
Hmm.
is it's fun looking back at Bible prophecy, from my Christian roots. I would
Hmm.
say I
Yeah.
remember a few things.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one that says that the Earth is meant to stand to time indefinite,
Mm.
and I can see that this, in a sense, is a really good set. Why waste it? You got
Yeah.
now I just have to add a few really sprinkle in a few very interesting
Right.
characters, like ooh, a Noon, that guy's good. A
That
chat, oh
guy's
man,
good.
that
Yeah.
Duke, Sam,
Yeah.
on and
It's
on,
it's endless.
and
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah.
And once people can get over themselves, I mean, I say that, but everybody's going to
Play their role.
play the role the way
Yeah.
they're supposed to play it, and
Hmm.
so that's where my appreciation for everything has really come into play. I just appreciate all things that really have come to
Right.
that have got to come to pass,
Yeah.
or
And
play their part and play it out. So it takes a lot of fear out
out
of
of
the
the equation.
equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, you were talking about some books and stuff that came your way, and you had given me a book when we first met. No, I mean, when we first kind of became friends. Um, I think this was around 2017, maybe.
Okay.
But it was Eckhart Tolle, The
Mm.
Power of Now. And that book just resonated with me so much. And one of the reasons why is because it, you know, one thing I think religion does um, is it gets people so much into their head. And, just like when you're in Jehovah's Witness or, in any very kind of dogmatic, very heavy theological system, you're just thinking all the time, and you're going back to the past, and you're thinking and thinking and thinking about the things that happened in the past or in the Bible, or you're thinking and worrying about the future. Is this world going to end? What's going to happen? And you're never in the moment. You're never in the present. And how you waste your entire life because that's where life happens. And that's what that book taught me is like life happens now. And even when, you know, the future comes, what's it going to be? Now.
Yeah.
It never isn't now. You can never not be in the now. So that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
And it's so simple,
It
but
is.
it's also very hard for us to
I'll
do.
tell you what. I read that book, and I actually read it twice, and I read uh, another one or two of his books, and yeah, it's funny because at some point after going down that avenue, I also started to realize that this present, this being in the moment, is what love is now. What this word love
Mm,
means to me, and I know
yes.
categorically, well, even scripturally speaking, there's several kinds of love. You have agape, philia, eros. What's the other one? There's another one.
Eros is man, agape,
Philia,
philika,
philia is like a brotherly love. Agape was
um, selfless love.
yeah, is a selfless
Yeah.
love, and then eros, of course, is a romantic
Romantic
love,
love.
and then there's another one,
I don't remember that one.
shangi, or what was that? Uh, and that's more of a brotherly love, like
Mm. Well, there's family love
the
too.
family love
Maybe
is
that's
the
what, yeah,
yeah
family love. Yeah.
is the family love is that's the other one. I can't
Okay.
remember what it is, but um, in really breaking it down moment to moment,
Mm-hmm.
I've come to know that love is my ability to be in the moment, because this
Mm-hmm.
is the most absorbed I can be in the moment. And
Right.
it's not you're forcing yourself to be in the moment, it's just
Mm-hmm.
you are present, and
Yeah.
you are engaged and
Right.
meditating on what is happening in front of you
In
right
front of you.
now.
Do you feel like meditation helped you with that a lot?
Oh, ex- extensively. So
Yeah.
while I was in India, we did this Vipassana. It was a 10-day silent meditation.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. To sit, I think it's
I got one of those coming up
14 hours. Oh, you do.
mm,
Congratulations.
end of
Well,
February.
good luck. I've done two of them. I did one in Hong Kong. I did one in Nalanda, India.
Mm.
And the first one in India, and sitting there for pretty much, I think, 12 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
looking at yourself. They take away all forms of any kind of entertainment. That's absolutely out. You have to turn in your phone, books, pencils, everything,
Mm-hmm.
because they want you to devote your time within, looking within.
Right. No distractions.
No distractions,
Mm-hmm.
and they feed you, they house you, and it's all free.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best part. And there's thousands of these centers
Right.
all over this
I think the
globe.
one I'm going to is in Jessup,
Oh, and
Georgia.
Jessup, yeah,
Yeah.
Pan actually, that was her second
Oh,
second
really?
time she had done it there.
Yeah.
Uh, that was one of the greatest drugs I've ever had. And there
Really?
was, you know, no plants involved. Is that
Mm,
10 days? I would say that that was another one of those milestone moments in my life that I, there's such a clarity
mm.
that came with it.
Oh, that's
And
awesome, man.
it's mind boggling. And so, really, at that point,
You
that's
feel
why I say
so alive and so.
2014 almost marked my last time of doing any hallucinogenics.
Mm.
I didn't feel necessary anymore. I felt, very very calm and at peace with what I understood and what I now know. And then
Well, can I interject real quick?
yeah, of course, you are the host.
uh, I feel like that is tied a lot to why I do stunts. When you get into the psyche of the stuntman, uh, and I never realized this until I don't know, maybe recently. But I have my whole life I have struggled so much with being present. Um, I'm always in my head, and I'm always and I had this one of my first marijuana trips that really gave me this insight. And I stepped out kind of out of myself, and I saw that there was one version of me that was always focused on the past. There was another version of me that was always focused on the future and worrying about it. And then there was another version of me that was always worrying about what everybody else was thinking about me. And then there was another version of me that was, for that time, was just looking at all these other versions of me. And this version was back here. And it was not any of these. It was just kind of interesting going, uh, huh, you know?
That must have been a pretty hard hit, or was that an edible?
I can't remember. Yes, I think
Yeah,
it was.
that sounds profound. That
Yeah, it was
sounds,
so profound,
yeah.
man. It was so, and the funny thing is I met you the next week and you gave me the power of now. And it
Yeah.
just, boom, it all just really came together for
Dang.
me, you know? But, what was I going to, oh, so as a stunt person, uh, I realized that before I even did stunts, I always did something to challenge myself and scare myself because it would force me to focus on the present moment.
Mm.
It was the only
Mm.
way that I could be 100% present
Hmm.
was I was scared I was going to die.
Yeah.
And it would make me be so in the moment, you know? And I think that that was a big reason to be coming into a stunt
That's
world, you
that's a
know?
very incredible understanding, Duke. I really appreciate that. I've gone down the road of what makes a stuntman,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very very odd fellow that or woman that wants to pursue a profession
Mm-hmm.
where it's not glamorous. It's not nearly as glamorous. The glamour comes later with the stories. I
Sure.
met this guy. I worked with that
Right.
guy. That's cool.
For that
But
1% that's glamorous, there's 99% that just,
where you're in the mud, freezing, cold,
yeah.
taking, you sticky with blood that hits all over
Mm.
you. Been there, done that a lot of times. Um, and what it is that makes us, I mean, this is a deep deep rabbit hole that I really recommend for a stunt person to go down,
Mm-hmm.
because it ends you up exactly where you're saying it. What you're talking about is it allows you in that moment. I mean, I'm not going to liken it to an orgasm, but yeah, okay, at this point I better, because it has an extreme similarity.
Yeah.
Is
Mm-hmm.
that peak of focus that
Yeah.
is required to
Mm.
execute, to look good. There's so many things
So
that are
many,
bouncing in that
yeah, because you be
focus.
safe, but you also want to look good. And you also have to be consider of what the camera's seeing and the angle. I mean,
And when rolling happens, you know,
yeah,
you some of the a lot of the fears click out, gone.
there's no
And
room
all
for
of a
them.
sudden you are it's oops, it is I can't think of a more
Right.
rewarding job.
Well, I think that speaks a lot to why you had so much success in the stunt business. You know, like sure, your dad was this guy, and yeah, you're physically talented, but there's a lot of guys that can say maybe they have those two things, but that third component that you're just talking about, where when the action is called and everything has to happen, you know, it takes a special person to be able to just zone in and
Mm.
focus on that and be able to put everything else out of their head and just be right at that moment.
Yeah.
And if there's still stuff in your head, you're not going to have it's not going to go the way you want it to,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that I mean I'm very thankful for recently I've gotten to do a few gags that hadn't been strapped in for in a little bit, but I did a turnover on Thunderbolts. Heidi Moneymaker, I've had a wonderful relationship with her. She's a
She's amazing.
oh man, and
I
talk
love her.
about present and
Yeah.
being and at the same time being able to multitask. I mean, this is a very rare gem in this
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful human, and as luck would have it, she's allowed me to co-coordinate with her on a few things, go in second unit stunt coordinate. So
What
I'm
are a couple of those? Just
well, most recently is Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then we did Hawkeye. You're wearing the shirt right
Yes,
now.
that's
There we
right.
go. Boom.
Yeah. Love
Yeah,
this. This is
so
my
we
favorite shirt, by the way.
yeah,
I love
great.
this shirt.
Thank you. Yeah. So I get to turn over a car, and so recently when you're coordinating, I really am living vicariously through the eyes of performers. I love watching the intensity of a stunt performer. It's
Mm,
it's like no other.
mm,
These people are number one intelligent. That this
mm.
some of my I mean I really like hanging out with stunt people. There is a level of intelligence. They're not just a bunch of meatheads
No,
throwing caution to the wind. These
no.
are scientific people.
Mm,
They know geometry. They get a feeling. I'm not talking everybody, but I'd say for the most part, people that have a successful stunt career
mm-hmm.
have an edge of I don't know. There's just something about them
Right.
that's quite special, and it's fun to actually intermingle with them. I don't like to necessarily hang out with too many people, but I think stunt people are a gem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really appreciate looking at the eyes of somebody that is one trying to figure out a move, let's
Mm,
say,
mm-hmm.
or the intensity of just before you're gonna crash a car or
You're
something
right.
like that. Well, I
Right.
get an opportunity to flip a car over in on Thunderbolts. You
Mm.
know, I uh, Heidi's like, oh, dude, who are we gonna get for that? I'm like, I definitely put my hands up for one of these things because they're fun to
Right
do.
here.
I mean, wait, they're dangerous to do, but they're fun to do. But the calm that I got to experience as this where I'm at now in life
Yeah.
uh, was was amazing.
Mm,
I, you know, we had flipped over a few cars. We had to flip over a few cars. So we're down to the very last day of filming. We have a few hours left of light. We have two more cars to flip.
mm.
Mine's one of them. And then the other one is going to be Eric Salas doing this end over in this Humvee, and I was doing a
Nice.
car flipper in this Humvee. Well, the day before we had flipped one over,
Mm.
and it had almost landed back on its wheels. So it went up, came
Oh, it
down,
didn't
but
come
when
all
it bounced, it caught the edge of the road and started to flip. A
interesting.
winner, but there was a
Just barely though.
probability of it
Yeah.
rewriting
Recorrecting,
itself.
rewriting
Yeah,
itself. Yeah.
rewriting itself back to its wheels. So now
Yeah.
I'm in literally the exact same vehicle with the same machine. It comes down to the director really wants the car to flip. It really
Mm.
wants the car to flip. It's got to flip. That was my thought going into the night before we do the gag.
Before you have to do it. Yeah.
And so looked at the film of Shane Haberstad had done the first Humvee, and it ends up going over, I think, 3.5 times once it caught.
Nice.
But there was that moment of it almost didn't
Is it?
catch.
Is it?
It almost, we
Ooh.
got lucky on that one. So now I'm, brain trust. What are we doing, guys? Ask the effects guy to come join me for dinner. What is it going to take to make sure that this thing is flipped over, no
Mm.
matter what happens? I push the button,
Mm.
it's
Right.
going over.
Right.
And so we all came up with a number, 38 miles an hour. a little less than Shane was doing because it's a car flipper. It's not a cannon. So, this inertia, you lose a little inertia in the forward momentum of the car.
Oh, okay. I
The
see.
down push, the down force of the
Because
arm.
the force is not as hard as a cannon
Yeah,
force.
it's pneumatic. It has a much more gradual throw. Once
I
you're
see.
over, you're over. It's gonna
Right.
do what a cannon would do. But uh,
So going slower might help that
I'm
a little
thinking,
bit.
so the thought was Shane was probably doing 41, 42, and there's this huge gouge in the ground where he's going. And
Mm-hmm.
so anyways, asked the effects guy, and we came up with, let's max the volume of the tank, of the
Mm-hmm.
holding tank for the cannon,
Yeah.
for the cylinder to
Which is
fire,
how much?
and maxed it out. I forget what the number was. It was high. It
It's
was
high.
in the thousands. So they got this thing up to maximum, and I'm going to drive 38 miles an hour. Push the button, hold the button, because it cycles. Instead of on a cannon, you push
You
the
just
button,
push
it's
it and it boom.
instantaneous. The
Yeah.
powder's blowing in
So you got to hold it down the whole time.
on the arm. Yeah, well, in this particular one, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to make sure that the whole thing cycled.
Mm.
That all happens within less than a second's time. But, you can't just go pop.
Right.
You got to hold it, through. And then, so I'm sitting there. It's baking hot out on the tarmac.
I
I've
bet.
got my fire suit on. I'm in a three layer hood, helmet, Hans, the whole shebang. The car's already hot. It's a Humvee, and it's the heat is boiling through this thing. So it's a sauna.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proper sauna, and I'm in it for probably 40 minutes.
Ooh, that sounds
Buckled
miserable.
in,
Oh,
ready to go. They decided to move the
I know
camera. I
that
did
feeling.
one more run. Did one more run, see where they're putting the new where they want me to hit the button.
Yeah.
And I get back there, and it seems like, 15 minutes has gone by, 20 minutes has gone by. Sweat's just pouring out of, pouring down.
Ugh.
But Duke, I'm telling you, this calm of seeing this thing all as a giant movie, and I
Uh-huh.
am getting to see it from this perspective
Mm.
is it. Uh, Heidi gets on the radio. I have my comms on.
Yeah.
Heidi gets on the radio. She says, Nooner, whatever you do, make sure it gets into the dirt. Oh, so, okay, so I've been thinking, flip, flip, flip. Doesn't matter. If it flips and I'm going down the highway, it's okay. Flip, flip, flip. And then she comes
And then
on
she puts
comms.
another
Literally, I'm super buckled in.
another layer on there.
Super buckled in. And I hear that get into the dirt. It was if this was the old noon, I would have been in absolute panic mode.
Mm.
I,
Mm.
I, I mean, I would have still gone through with it, but there would have been a heart racing, mind
Right.
racing, everything would have gone
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
haywire. And as it was, is I there was a calm in me that
Huh.
I so appreciated.
Mm.
My heart was beating maybe 70 beats per minute at
Wow.
this point, and I had been running up and down this tarmac all day long.
Wow.
Uh,
Huh.
I was so calm, and for some reason, there was this reservation of, you know, everything is impermanent. This moment is impermanent. Life is impermanent.
Mm.
I, I'm at the mercy of whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And when that finally hit me,
Mm.
the gag went stellar, right? I
Wow.
flipped, it caught,
God.
it flipped. I'm in the dirt, I'm
Nice.
upside down, and I'm going, okay, that was really an awesome
Yeah.
experience.
How cool, man.
Yeah, and it was it's just one of those lovely moments where you can introspect, see
Right.
what's really where you're at in this,
And
even
think
in
about
this
like
chaos.
how how many other, I mean, I'm sure there's many, but how many other things could you do in this world that would give you that opportunity to step out like
Yeah,
that, you
that
know?
again, this is I mean,
Yeah.
it's could I have been anything but this? I can honestly say no. I know for a fact that this is my lot in life, and I've played this game. I have the stories, I have the friends, I have the experiences, I've shared laughter, I've shared pains,
It really it really does seem like destined.
Yeah, oh
You
yeah.
know.
And I mean, my wife, on her deathbed, she threw a couple bombs at me that I mean will I'll always live with me. One that's was profound was this is I believe she used the word God, but at the same time I semi remember Brahma, which
Mm.
in Hinduism is, Brahma is the head of
The
the
head deity.
yeah. And but she said this is God's dream and you are being dreamed.
Mm.
And that was profound. I think, and the other one was you thought you were driving, but I promise you, at no time did you ever have the steering wheel. And uh,
Mm.
I think between those two, after she passed away, she passed away in at the fastest thing. We were in India doing yoga teacher training in Rishikesh, India.
Mm.
Right after we had finished I think Avengers, and then did a quick stint on J.J. Perry and Justin Yu had us over on Gemini Man in
Oh,
Savannah for
cool.
a minute, and then right
Yeah.
from there we went to India to pursue our yoga,
Hmm.
which we love doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so while we were in India uh, doing this yoga teacher training, I get a call from Simon West, who had a movie that he wanted actually both of us to work on.
Hmm.
It was a Chinese produced film going to be shot in Malaysia. Pan, we would love to have Pan because she spoke many
Fluent
languages.
Chinese,
Chinese,
English.
she spoke several dialects of
Uh,
Chinese, and what part do you want her to play? And so it was a big action movie, and uh, turned her into the stunt department coordinator.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah, you were
Yes, I
flipping
was.
cars on that one.
I
Actually,
got to
the
be
best
there.
car flip, most major car flip I've been a part of in my life is the one that
That's
you
saying a
did
lot.
off
Wow.
that
Thank you,
cliff.
man.
Yeah, that was cool,
You know,
cool.
well, thanks for trusting me with that. You
Well,
know, that
thanks for
was,
trusting me for trusting
yeah,
you.
well, we
Yeah,
trusted each other and
it's
it worked out
reciprocal.
great.
Yeah,
Worked out really good. So,
yeah,
yeah.
that was awesome, dude. But so we had gone to India, decided to cut our trip short. So we had been in India for 2 months. Flew back to the States, gathered our stuff, went to Malaysia for a couple months, and while
Hmm.
we were there, she tripped and fell on and landed on a curb. And I was on set, uh, in a different part of it, and she was
Hmm.
handling the 40 or 50 people that we had working during the sequence.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
That was a big sequence. That was when all those people were getting out of the pool, yanked
yeah,
out of
we
the
had
pool, and fire
ratchets
burns
everywhere,
everywhere.
fire
And
burns,
oh
the whole
man, yeah,
shebangy
that was a
was
big
going
one.
off. And anyways, so she was running to, you know, like she did. She was an amazing first AD in China, and she was
Hmm.
an awesome stunt department coordinator.
Yeah.
And she trips, falls, says that's strange, and literally, I mean, I don't want to go through the details, but 3 months later, after finding this giant tumor in her, she passed away in the hospital in Houston, Texas, at the MD Anderson Cancer Center, and
Yeah.
that was quite an experience. But I will
Yeah.
say that anybody that is going to teach you a life lesson was watching this Buddha
Mm.
deteriorate from this. She's 17 years younger than me, so she's 38 when she dies.
Hmm.
Um,
I
with
remember. I
such,
remember that time. She was
oh my
perfect.
gosh,
She
yeah,
was
that was,
perfect. There was. I mean, you know.
if you're going to say a flawless death, a spotless,
Yeah.
perfect, unblemished death, it's just the way she went. And man, with a smile on her face, just
It's amazing.
so positive of what is next, and
Mm.
if anything is. Anyway, so those are the two bombs that she left me. One is this is God's dream and you are being dreamed. And I took that one really, really deep. And where I thought at that point was I was extremely sound with my understanding of life at that point. That, it took me to a whole nother level of
Hmm.
peace. And yeah, I thank her.
Which is what you needed at that time.
I think that experience with her constantly. I mean, daily. It's always in my
All
mind.
right. Yeah.
Life has traveled on since.
Okay. So after Pan passes, and I mean, she did give you some great um, treasures to go on, but I'm sure it was a difficult time still, and you have to kind of readjust now. But you're in a different state, and you're kind of getting pretty busy again too, like
Yeah,
as
yeah.
work
So she
wise.
passes. It was January 3rd, 2019, at 3:16 a.m.
Mm.
Yeah, those are the dates that'll last for they
January
were
3rd, 316.
live in infamy in my soul.
Mm.
This character probably
What do
won't
you?
forget that.
Do those numbers mean anything to you? Any
Uh,
significance?
I think I was trying to at the time attribute some kind of uh, mysticism to them,
Hmm.
some meaning.
Right.
But in the end, I think it's just a much bigger, overarching viewpoint of life that doesn't necessarily make me look for numbers of any.
Mm.
I don't do astrology, although I'll entertain it if somebody's wants
Mm.
to throw out a
Yeah.
some
Well,
kind of prophecy or whatever.
we kind of on our journey went through that a little bit of that number stage.
Yeah,
Their numbers
I
just
think
keep
it's part
popping
of
out
it.
at you.
I
It is kind of
I
crazy.
think it's part of it,
Yeah.
and it's fun how it all comes. But then if you really back out again, all the way back to the single
Yeah.
subject objectivizing this thing, anything is possible. All this information
Right.
is relevant, is
Well,
instantaneous.
just from my background, 316
So
is the
John
36
3:16,
John
God is love.
316. I just it
Yeah,
pulls up, but yeah.
yeah. So I had that too.
Mm.
And I think that is a normal. Actually, it seems like it runs very. It's part of this
It's
journey.
all
Yeah, it seems
yeah.
like a lot of people start to count numbers and
Right.
try to find meaning in 1111. Any of those coincidental,
Synchronicities.
synchronistic
Yeah. Yeah.
numbers. Yeah.
But as you get back into things again, was that difficult to go back to work?
It was. So my segue back into it. So when Pan dies, I quit the business again. I
Hmm.
don't know if I'm coming back, but I know that I'm going
Yeah, you
to.
went to India, I think,
Yeah.
right?
So I
Kind of
took her
traveled around.
ashes. I took her ashes from
Yeah.
MD Anderson and in Houston. And something that she had left me was her will that said, I don't want any Chinese. You know what? I'll add this to your things.
Okay.
I'll share her will. It's
Yeah.
epic.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Uh, where she doesn't want any Chinese convention. She wants people to be in peace. Throw my Put my ashes in the ocean. Any ocean, like an illusory drop, returns to its wholeness, is what
Mm.
she leaves me with.
Wow.
So now I have her, box of ashes, and I I get to the Gulf of Mexico, which is now going to be the Gulf of America, apparently, which is awesome. Whatever. And I start to dump her ashes, and I
Mm.
realize at this point there's just no way this cannot be the end of it. So I take 1 cup of ashes and I spread them out in the Gulf, and it was a place that was meaningful. While we were working on 4 or 5 movies in New Orleans, we would constantly go down to Long Beach in Mississippi.
Mississippi. Mm.
Yeah, we made love in that water. It was great. And so we had some wonderful times there. I
Mm.
remember on our weekends we would drive there and smoke a joint, have a mushroom, sit there and feed the seagulls. It would
Wow.
congregate around you. But so it was a meaningful
Cool.
place. But I just couldn't get rid of the ashes all there. So closed up the box, did my little uh, my lamentations, and yeah, it's more than that. It was my devotionals to Pan.
Mm.
And then I drove to the next place that was meaningful and that we had just been to in Savannah because we had just been there doing Gemini Man a
Yeah.
couple months
I
back.
worked a little bit on that
You
actually.
did?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I start doing the ashes there, and I
Mm.
realize, oh my God, I can't do this here either.
Mm.
I took them all the way back across country, so I'm driving, and this is taking weeks now. I mean, I'm stopping at every place that I could remember that we had visited while we were on our walkabout, which was coast to coast,
Yeah.
south to north to south, east to west. We didn't hit every state, but we spent a lot of time in Colorado mountains. We spent sometimes in
Love
Arkansas,
Colorado. Yeah.
digging for crystals. We
Oh,
So
okay.
places that
Yeah.
were fun and meaningful. I ended up taking these ashes everywhere,
Hmm.
and so right now our ashes are now in Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. Take them to the Pacific Ocean,
Wow.
and now I'm in near Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, dropping her ashes because we, broke down there and lived in the mountains there
Yeah.
and on the beach there, and then I couldn't finish there. I had to go to India, and I went back to Rishikesh where we just were, and where she had an epiphany in life, she said, and
Mm-hmm.
poured out the rest of her ashes in Rishikesh in the Maganga, they call
Mm.
it, the Ganges River,
Right.
which is the holy river,
Mm.
and somewhere where we spent a good amount of time with some pretty spiritual people.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the end of it. I couldn't get rid of everything. I burned some of it on the edges of the Ganges River, and then I realized I got to go to China now. So now I've been on the road for months.
Mm.
I'd been in India for 4 or 5 months, and then I flew to China to now finally see her family after
Yeah.
all of this. They knew, what her request was, that she wanted no fanfare whatsoever going out.
Right.
She literally wanted to be cremated in the simplest form and spread her ashes. Well, I held on to these ashes for almost 9 months. I get to China. We With her stepmom and we went to the South China Sea, burned all the rest of the things and sent it out to there.
Mm.
And so that was the end of the
Mm.
ashes. So they
They'd been the circumference of the earth. It's
yeah, they
all
went they
around.
went places. I'll say
Yeah.
that. And
Didn't that kind of what her name was Pan? Because that wasn't
yeah,
her
so I
Chinese
mean,
name, right?
her last name is Pan
Her last name
in
is Pan.
Chinese,
Oh,
but
okay.
Chinese use Pan, their last name as first name. So Pan was
Yeah, like the
what everybody
Japanese.
knew her
Yeah.
as. Uh, when she became naturalized, she was Pan Ying.
Mm.
So her first name is really Ying, last name Pan, but everybody called her Pan because that's how they refer to him there. But when she got naturalized, became a U.S. citizen 5 years after we are together, she changed her name to Pan. I am. I
Mm.
am her last name, Pan, her first name. She
Mm.
never really took on Orsatti, which was totally fine with me. I was at that point with that doesn't matter,
Yeah.
silly stuff. But Pan I am, which is
I'm
Pan is
everything.
everything. I am is everything.
Mm.
Uh, and
That's
without
so
a
cool.
sense of look at me or anything,
No, it's different. It's just totally different.
it was
It's
just her.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful.
What a great relationship. What a great experience. What a great everything. It
Mm.
was, yeah, that was magical.
Mm.
But
But you finally do get back in the business
so
again.
back in the business. So after I traveled with the Ashes and I felt like that was complete, I think Michael Huggins had Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Mm.
Uh, and since I had been working with him on the rigging team on Avengers, uh, I got to go and be back on Falcon and the Winter Soldiers. There were a couple times where I told him, like, I gotta step off for a second. I got
Yeah.
tears coming and I can't stop them.
Mm.
And that happens. That happens every once in a while. It'll still just you can't even. There's
Yeah.
no mind thought or anything. The
Well,
tears just keep coming.
um, Pan's really the reason that you and I became friends.
we meet through our wives,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Iami talking to her on Black Panther
yeah,
set and trying to, because Pam was new and trying to figure out her pads, and Iami's like, "Can I help you with those?" And then they make friends, and then
yeah,
they decide, "Hey, let's get our husbands together." And
yeah,
Iami comes home to me, and she's like, "I met this really sweet Chinese lady, and she's married to a stunt guy. I think he's kind of big. I don't know." And she's trying to pronounce your name, and she's totally screwing it up. And she's like, "It's noon or Orsatti," or and I'm like, "Noon Orsatti?" She's like, "Yeah, that's it." I was like, "Oh, wow, you made friends with Noon Orsatti's wife? Yeah, and they want to have lunch with us. Oh, cool, okay." Yeah,
yeah,
and that's how it began.
yeah.
So
That's a
yeah,
nice. That was a very nice relationship.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was. We did a
yeah.
lot of yoga together.
It did a lot of yoga
Yeah,
together.
a lot of hot yoga.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are a couple of things that are recent that you just worked on that might be coming out soon that maybe you kind of wanted
Mm.
to talk about?
Have a so
Yeah,
last year I did a few not sitcoms. I did a couple rom-coms.
rom-coms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
romantic comedies. One is You're Cordially Invited, which will be coming out on, I believe it's Sam. Is it Amazon? I
Okay.
think so. Anyways, that's You're Cordially Invited. It's Will Ferrell and
Yeah,
Reese Witherspoon.
that's going to be great. It's going to be
Yes,
so
it
good.
it was super fun.
Yeah,
If you've never worked on a rom-com, they are so worth working on.
yeah.
The director Nicholas Stoller is loved him.
Yeah.
He's very collaborative. And then and then right after that, Bride Hard, which
Right hard.
is Rebel
Yeah.
Wilson, who is sporting a nice new figure. And
I know. I was surprised when I saw
right,
her.
yeah, she
Yeah.
looked great.
She looked really good.
Yeah, and she moves great. She's a really talented person. She learned the
Yeah.
choreography of quite a
I
few
think she's
fights,
hilarious, man.
and
She's one of my favorites.
so I'm excited about that. They were both smaller budget movies,
Yeah.
but it's so fun to work on, and I think we gave them a lot
Yeah.
of bang for their buck. Also, Thunderbolts, which was with Heidi, the Moneymaker Gang.
The Moneymaker Gang.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so man. If I only
That's
had
going to be a great movie,
one
man. I
person
think,
to work with or for the rest of my life, it definitely hands down. Heidi
yeah.
Moneymaker is
I agree with you on that one.
she's so groovy.
Yeah.
But
I
we
just want to
did.
say thank you because you brought me on all of those, actually.
Oh, good. Well,
So thank you.
you
Yeah.
are one of those pegs that fit a lot of holes, dude. You've got
A chameleon.
yeah.
Yeah.
You are a very used multi-tool,
Uh,
multi-tool, and
I'm a
you can
tool,
act.
that's for sure. But
Yeah, well, it's obviously paid off. You've been doing this a long time. You
yeah.
haven't, been bussing tables
Yeah.
anytime
Thank
lately.
goodness.
So
Yeah.
I think you're doing just fine.
Yeah.
You got talent and you've got the good skill set. And you're kind of an all-around jack.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
super, super good guy too.
So you
And
had
you're an asshole
Thunderbolts.
to work with.
But you
uh,
got Thunderbolts.
and Thunderbolts. And then
Yeah.
Thunderbolts was, I feel that the action in this movie, because Marvel wanted to walk away from so much wire work and green screen, that we
Really?
end up doing
I
the
didn't know.
stunts very
Yeah.
practical. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I didn't know that was like a decision they
yeah,
made. Huh?
yeah, and crazy enough, they hadn't really turned a car over with a person in it in years, and
Really?
so we
Wow.
got to do several of them on the show, and it was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
That's
again,
really
thank you,
cool.
Heidi, for allowing me to and trusting me to run with that ball a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting ready to wrap this up, but before we do, any parting advice for some new stunt people out there coming up in the business?
Mm. I would, and I would share what my father shared with me
Mm.
is when you're on set, be present, learn what people do. Do you know what a key grip does? Do you know what a gaffer does? Do you know
Mhm.
what a best boy is? Do you know what on-set dresser is? Do you know what,
Yep.
you
Know the
should really
departments.
learn all these things.
Hmm.
In the end, it'll pay off.
Right.
The other thing is definitely edit, edit,
Mm.
edit, edit, edit. I'm supposing that you are already coming with a skill set that, you know,
Right.
exemplifies your work,
Whether a driver or motorcycle or martial artist or something.
trick or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and suppose,
That's
expect that you already have
you
these
have something.
skills.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to further those skills in the business, I would say the next step is to learn how to edit,
Mm,
shoot your own shorts, know what it takes to make a movie,
mm.
really,
Great
from,
advice. Yeah.
making your own props to whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Plus, it's fun. You learn a lot. It's fun
oh
doing
man,
that stuff.
it's great. Learn camera, ask questions,
Mm,
you know when you can, when you can cross lines safely and when you have to neutralize shots and,
yeah.
figure out that kind of thing. What size lens does what cameras do what.
Mm,
Um, I find it to be, because technology is moving at such a rapid pace. I find myself now, if I'm on a movie, one of my first calls will be to the director of photography and just say, hey, what's our format?
mm.
What's our format, so that you can plug in, any one of these Artemis or Cadrage, into your iPhone, so that you can start getting a sense of
What the
frame
lenses
frame sizes and
and
what
the
you're
frame
really going to be
sizes.
seeing, through the lens.
Oh, that's cool. Huh.
Uh, but I think that, that I find myself now, what I was about to say is, I find myself now having to look these things up per film as they come up. It's just too much to
Mm,
understand all
yeah.
the things,
Thank goodness for Google, right?
yeah.
um, so, how would you suggest that they make a connection to somebody in the business? How do they get their stuff out there and their face out there and be seen?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure that uh, hustling per se, as I grew up hustling, was where you
Right.
take an 8 by 10 photo to a stunt, to a stunt
Drop it
coordinator.
right in his hand and
And unless, especially now, with security as tight as it is, it's
yeah.
hard to get into a
Well, it went away
studio.
completely when
Yeah,
COVID hit. Like you, no, yours, nobody could go to set.
yeah.
And then I noticed when it went away, it hasn't really completely come back again. You
Seems
know,
that way.
so it's good to have a group of people that you kind of hang out with, you train with, you get to know well, and that's kind of your comrades,
Yeah.
basically, right? That
And
you
those are
trust
the
each
same
other.
guys that you when you have the opportunity to go meet somebody face to face,
Yeah,
uh, it's advantageous. Somebody you can collaborate with, do some fight scenes, do some editing,
right. Yeah,
it's here in Atlanta. There's a brotherhood or sisterhood, whatever, that is very reminiscent of the old, what I remember as a
mm-hmm.
young stuntman when I'm in ISA in the
Yeah,
80s, early 80s.
yeah,
And it seems like a lot of people are rooting for each other, and which
yeah,
is really cool.
yeah.
I'm getting the sense of that, and here I am now looking in
Mm,
to a situation that I've experienced, and it
mm.
really hasn't fallen too far away
To change too
from
much.
that root. Yeah, that root brotherhood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and and then to get coordinators to see your stuff. How
I,
would you?
so
You said hustling's. We kind of talked that that's
yeah,
not really so
I
much a
mean,
thing
I
anymore.
still think that the modalities that are out there, I mean, the one that I've used most recently is Stunt Phone.
Stunt phone's a
John
big one.
Dixon, I think,
Yeah.
runs that, and he does a good job. He's a friend of mine, so I call him up,
Mm,
much like I would do with Bill or Johnny's or Teddy's back in the day, and say, "Hey, who do you have?"
right.
I need somebody, 6'3", 280, blah blah
Yeah.
blah, and or a woman that blah blah blah, and he's pretty quick to
Right.
have a
And there's a
name and a
few.
number. But so I do think I think it is value. I think it's important
Yeah.
to be listed.
And there's
I'm
like stunt players
still,
directory. I think there's stunt access. I think there's iStunt. There's IPOC, which is another for people of color. So there's a few options out there.
okay.
People look it up. I know nowadays, but uh, I think stunt phone definitely is one that's very much used by a lot of
Yeah,
coordinators.
and I don't know if the stunt players directory is still a topic or not.
Oh, I may be mistaken on that. I thought that it was still a website that you could get information off of, but I might be wrong on that. I might have to check that out, make
Okay.
sure. So
Anyways,
yeah,
back when I was, coordinating multiple shows at a time, that thing never left my side.
mm,
It was my Bible.
I think I have one somewhere in here, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's very helpful.
yeah,
Yeah, other than that, and then when you're on set, be around, be helpful. But if there's a pad that needs to be moved, I mean, the first
good
guy to
one.
that pad's gonna impress
Get
me.
off the phone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really appreciate somebody that is paying attention.
yeah,
I really appreciate people that are proactive, that they're
mm,
actually their ear is to the ground. They're listening. Oh, the coordinator's having a conversation about, oh, maybe if we put a couple boxes out there, and well, this guy that has already heard that and is already moving the boxes over is really the
is
guy
really
that's going to
helpful.
get the next job, honestly.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, well, Noon, I think we have done a pretty good job of covering a lot of stuff here tonight.
Yeah, I'm
And
sorry, I rambled a lot, I know.
yeah, but it's
And
all so interesting, man.
okay,
Like
thank
every bit
you.
of it just keeps you on the edge of your
Thank you.
seat.
I
It's
hope
so
I didn't
interesting.
defame or in any way rub anybody in a negative. I never meant to do
Yeah,
that because
that's
that's
not
not
you
in my
at all.
not in my
Yeah,
soul anymore.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Well, thank you so much, brother, for being here.
yeah. Thank you,
I'm
Duke.
definitely gonna have you back. We got a lot of good stuff here, but there's so much more that we can dig into. So we'll definitely have you back.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I'd like that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming out, brother. Love you, man.
yeah. Back at you.
Okay.
Boomerang.
And thank all of you guys for being here as well. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If so, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And more importantly, come back for more because we got a lot more where this came from. So be on the lookout. And remember, you only get to live this life once. So, like we say in the biz, don't screw this up. Until next time.